Everybody set? Here we go. Okay. Okay, welcome. I'd like to bring the Joint Advisory Board of this and the Select Board meeting of March 25th, 2025. We're here in the Select Board Chamber at the Town of Marshfield. I'd like to bring it to order. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Let's do it by Michael. All those in favor, Lynn Fiddler, aye. Steve,
A motion's been made and duly seconded. Roll call is in order. Ms. Fiddler?
aye.
Mr. Darcy?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Unanimous vote.
Thank you. So we are in our meeting. I'd like to ask you all to join me with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance. Okay, before we get started, I'd just like to introduce those in the room. We have Town Council, Robert Galvin. We have our moderator, Jim Fitzgerald. We have our treasurer, Sean Strobel, Town Administrator, Mike Marasco, as you can see by our nameplates, Eric Kelly, Steve Darcy, and myself. And I'd like to ask our advisory board to introduce their members as well.
Yes, Rick Smith, the chair of the advisory board.
Jan Martin.
Sherry Costello.
Paul DeCristofaro.
Brian Crowley.
Okay, well, thank you. We will get started in just a second. So I just want to let everybody know that the Select Board met last night and we discussed each of the articles in the special and in the annual, and we had a successful evening last night. So tonight is about getting us all together and giving the town an understanding of where the advisory board sits at this point, and letting us be part of the process, and having your board share with us your thoughts as we go forward. So I'd like to thank everybody for being here. We have most of our departmental folks here, and we have some members of the public as well. So Rick, if you'd like to bring your board.
Sure. So we'll go ahead and, if it's okay, we actually have a few recommendations that we wanted to make before the select board. That's okay.
Okay, I'd like to, before we do that, I'd like to just ask our moderator, Jim Fitzgerald, to just give a brief impression of what this meeting and the importance of it for the town as he sees it, and what the reasons for the importance of this night. So if you could
Sure.
just share with us.
As I believe we all know, they're involved with town government, maybe those of you who are new to it, what the warrant does, which is what we have available at Town Hall and various other places to get it. The warrant is a warning, and it's a warning that these are items that are going to be discussed at town meeting. So some of the items that you see in the warrant can be a little bit hard to understand. Some of them are deeply financial, some of them are planning articles, which are really kind of enveloped in legalese, because it's very important that all that gets said appropriately. The big part I take away from the Joint Advisory Board hearing with the Select Board is that the articles can be explained in a little bit better detail. If there's questions between the board, they can ask questions back and forth about what was inferred by this article. Here's what we see as being something that they need more information on. And it gives a way for the audience to get a better sense of what's in the warrant and how it's being presented and what the intents are. So the different parties that are proposing articles can explain them a little bit better. So from my standpoint, this is a great precursor to town meeting, when we've got a lot of people there and we're really trying to do the business of town meeting as effectively as we possibly can. This is a big tool to be able to get out the information that needs to be gotten out. really the debate happens at town meeting. This is more asking more, I think, particular questions, technical questions can come up here. And then that's what kind of sets the stage for what we do at town meeting.
Yep. So when we say set the stage, when we get to town meeting, it does feel like a stage has been set. But tonight, I'd like to make sure that we have as much back and forth as far as questions, so that we don't have so many unanswered questions when we get to town meeting. And I think that this board and your board has set that up for us tonight. So I hope tonight's a very productive night. And I appreciate all of you and all the hard work, because I know that you have really spent some long hours and some very thoughtful discussions getting to this point. So I appreciate that from you. And I also appreciate our town administrator and Sean and our account as well, and all of the departments that have been really working hard to get us to this point, to get us to a balanced budget. And all these articles on top of that are all really important to the residents here in Marshfield. So with that being said, I would like to recognize our chair of advisory and let him take the lead. Here we go.
Thank you very much, Ms. Fiddler. So as I was beginning to say, so the advisory board spent a considerable amount of time going through the fiscal year 2026 budget as presented over the last probably 6 weeks or so. And we thought that it would be appropriate to go one step further instead of just, I mean, we've obviously provided our recommendations on the budget, but we also thought it would be a good time to just provide the select board with a few recommendations that we have for the budget process going forward. So I'd like to take just a few minutes just to review these recommendations and invite obviously any comments directly from the advisory board, and obviously any questions that you have before we move into the warrants, if that's okay.
Okay.
Great. So there was, like I said, we spent a considerable amount of time going through the budget process, and obviously that included speaking with the department heads at length, both some of them here publicly and a lot of other meetings outside of the normal advisory board meeting. The first recommendation we have is that the advisory board should be included in the creation of department budgets to allow a more collaborative review process. So the advisory board has assigned its members to individual departments, and we believe that a process should be created for the advisory board members to be included in the creation of department budgets. And let me make sure that I'm clear. I'm not suggesting that the advisory board create the budgets or that the advisory board has any responsibility for creating the budgets, because that is not what that's not what's allowed by the bylaws. But it is to include the advisory board in an earlier stage in the creation of the budgets. The intent would be to ensure that board members are part of the process in a way that allows for ongoing collaboration, but not so as to create an impediment to the efficiency of the budget process itself, right? In other words, it shouldn't be that, well, the budget didn't get done because, you know, Rick Smith or Jan Martin wasn't available for a meeting. That's not okay, right? The budget process must go forward. There's a process defined by our bylaws for the town that has to happen. But we do believe by having the members assigned to those departments as part of those discussions early on, it will enable more collaboration, more transparency, that allow the process when we do get the budget that's presented to us on the last Monday of January and the kind of ensuing 5-6 weeks that we have to review. It'll give us more of an opportunity to actually review it at a higher level because we will have already been discussing and understanding what's going on down at the kind of the department level, if that makes sense. The second recommendation we have is that after speaking with the schools, we'd like to recommend that the Marshfield Public School District create a 5-year financial plan. So the Marshfield Public School District is the largest public expense in the town's annual budget, and as the district does have a strategic plan The plan should include a financial plan that allows the town and schools to collaborate on future needs and expectations. Clearly, we understand that there's a lot of challenges in putting together 5-year forecasts when there's so many things that could change, uncertainties and whatnot. But we do think that it allows, again, for an easier, a more smooth budget process, and one that brings everybody together. And we recommend that this be completed in advance of the next budget cycle. Our third recommendation is that we recommend that the town and the school district consider a new revenue sharing agreement or consider reviving the existing agreement. So the town and the school district we believe, should again consider a multi-year revenue sharing plan for future budget cycles. We believe that a revenue sharing agreement that was previously used by the town and the school district can be an effective tool in establishing expectations in a smoother budget process. Again, this is something that I don't think that we're qualified here to say that it absolutely should be or must be done, but we do think that it is something that should be given strong consideration in light of some of the challenges that we have in terms of making sure that the budget process is smoother going forward. The fourth recommendation is that the town and the advisory board should work collectively to create a platform that provides basic and foundational information on municipal finance for the benefit of the citizens and town meeting. We believe that transparency in the town finances is absolutely critical, and an informed electorate supports effective policymaking and fiscal management. It eliminates potential confusion and allows for more effective communication. We believe that a town platform dedicated to basic municipal finance is common, we've seen that this is common for towns throughout the Commonwealth. Oftentimes, if you go to other towns and look at what they have on their websites, for example, some of them use YouTube or other platforms, and they provide basically basic fundamentals and kind of the education, right, and how municipal finances work. It's not a crash course in terms of like, you're not going to walk out with a bachelor's degree in municipal finance, but it gives everybody a standard kind of starting point, right, in which to be able to discuss municipal finance. And given our town government and we use town meeting to move things forward here, we think that would be beneficial for the town, and that kind of tool would come at little or no cost to the town. Our fifth recommendation is that the town should find and approve quality applicants for board seats on the advisory board. So the advisory board, as most know, it's a critical part of the checks and balances of town government. And it requires a quorum of 5 members to operate under the town's bylaws. The advisory board currently is at 5 members right now. There are a total of 9 seats on the board, and we believe that filling the empty seats needs to be a priority for the town to ensure transparency and the continued checks and balances on town government. Our sixth recommendation is that all department heads should be included in and have an active role in the budget process for their departments. The advisory board received feedback from multiple departments that while the town has been helpful in working through prior year budget issues, they were not included at a detailed level in the assembly of town budgets. We don't want to get into trying to make recommendations on the operation of the town in terms of how things go on a day-to-day basis, but again, just from some of the feedback that we got, I would say a lot of the feedback that we got, a lot of the department heads felt that they wanted to have more of an inclusive role in the development of budgets. We think that that's a wise idea. And so we believe more collaboration in the budget process itself would promote a better outcome for all. The seventh and last recommendation is in relation to the town's accounting and finance platform, which is Munis. And that's that we believe that training in this program should be ongoing and repetitive. We heard from many departments that there was some confusion and challenges with understanding the Munis system. We understand that a change, obviously, to any system can be confusing. It can take time. It can be challenging. But we do think that ongoing training opportunities and confirmation of understanding would be effective in ensuring collaboration. We also think that access to Munis should also include visibility into revenue generated directly from that department, so long as it is appropriate. Those are the 7 recommendations that the advisory board is prepared, again, just as professionals in our daily jobs, as contributors to the town here. We thought it would be of benefit to make these recommendations to the board. Obviously, the board and the town are free to do with them as they want, but we thought that this would be helpful to share with you. Any other comments from the rest of the board?
No, that covers it pretty well. Thank you.
Any questions from?
I'd like to just add, so I appreciate these 7 points. Each one of them brings something to the table. So as we move forward, we'll take this under advisement. Perhaps we will have a few of these on our agenda to talk about and delve into it as we go forward, because I do agree that collaboration and working together and keeping everything moving forward it's a hard job, and when you're trying to take such a large amount of information in January and get to this point, you know, it's a big ask, and you're all volunteers, and you're 100% right. We need better volunteers, more volunteers, and appreciate the ones that we have. So that is a huge goal for us. Steve, is there anything you'd like to add?
You captured it.
Okay. Eric?
Yeah, number 3, the revenue sharing agreement. Rick, can you expand upon what that is?
So this is something that we thought would make sense to, again, give consideration to. So my understanding is that in the past, there was what's called a revenue sharing agreement. And what that was is that when the town adds revenue every year, as it does, right, that there is an agreed upon split in terms of how that works in order to make sure that the school department is receiving a commensurate amount, I would say, in terms of a percentage or whatnot, in that new revenue that appears for the town, that's going to the benefit to support their budget. What it does, we feel, and again, this is something we think should be looked at. We're not, like I said earlier, we're not the experts here, and probably deserves a whole lot of discussion between the schools and the town. But we think that it puts the town and the schools in more of a position of discussing strategy, as opposed to the schools being in I think, more challenging position that they've had to be in terms of being able to get the support for level service that they've requested year after year. And we just, instead of it being a conversation that sometimes can be a little bit challenging, we think that it puts folks closer to an even playing field. It doesn't mean that it can't be done differently, right? It doesn't mean that it's like necessarily an automatic, but it means that there's kind of a starting place, I'd say, that makes it a little easier for those conversations.
So just a second.
Yeah.
So since you're having this discussion and we're all here together, this is something that we will be discussing. It's not if we're going to be discussing, we will be discussing.
Great.
And we have town council here, so I'd like to just have him reiterate what this is and how. It hasn't been something that this town has done historically, and I'd like him to just share with everybody what this is, so at least there's a little bit on the record about what this means, and we will all have a little bit more insight into it.
Sure.
So,
Good evening. There is a written agreement between the school and the town dealing with new revenue and how it's to be shared. It hasn't been exactly adhered to. It's more of a memorandum of understanding. And when we have sufficient revenue to share, it has been shared. And, I'm not directly involved in the budget and how that money is shared and how it's allocated or not allocated to them, but it's kind of been a benchmark for the town for years. And to the extent that we can follow it, I believe we have, but there have been years that we haven't had as much, or the school needed more, or the town needed more. So it's not been universally adhered to.
yeah, so we will be working on that, so I appreciate that.
Of course.
Okay?
So are you saying that the schools are looking for automatic money in regards to their budget, in regards to what the town brings in?
Yeah, so I can't speak for the schools, Mr. Kelly. All I can say is that we think, given that the schools, being that they're sort of a separate governing body, right? I mean, they're within the town, but they're a separate body, so to speak, right? They have their own committee that puts together and approves their budgets and whatnot. It establishes a more solid starting point for the discussions in budgets between the town and schools. That's why we think it's something that should be looked at. The exact process that would or go around that is something that probably needs more discussion, but that's where we came out.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. I mean, I'm not afraid to look at it, but that is it's something to be discussed further, I think, as Lynn said.
Yeah.
In regards to the advisory board, would like to see more seats filled. What would be the necessity behind that, you think? I mean, I already have something stated towards it, but, I mean, what is the ultimate goal, I guess, you could look at in benefiting your overall goal of, what, 9 members you're looking for?
Correct, that's right. Yeah, so again, as I mentioned before, the advisory board is a board that provides transparency for the town, holds hearings and whatnot, where we can publicly discuss the budget and, other applicable, town financial items, right? And so, as you can imagine, that's a lot of work, especially for, right now, 5 of us to go through, because in transparency, we want to make sure that there's also accuracy and that there's understanding. It'd be easy for me to just sit here, review a budget and say, well, everything, went up 2 or 3%, so it must be fine. But I know that each one of us, as we sit at home and we do our own personal financial, our own home finances, and as we do it in our businesses, that we challenge ourselves to take a deeper look at everything every year, right? Probably even more often than that. And so that requires people. It requires people that are anxious to take on the job of understanding the details in how those finances and the operations are connected, because operations obviously yield the specifics in the finances themselves, and then be able to ask the questions that are necessary in order to make a cohesive recommendation on whether to proceed with that amount that's been recommended or not. And so, again, it just comes down to a matter of having an appropriate amount of people that can be able to ask those questions, give the time necessary to address what is, more than $100 million a year that's spent. And we think that that requires the full board of 9 members to do that.
So you're looking to spread the work
Correct.
a little more, so you can get more in depth in regards to what
Exactly. That's right.
Can I just, so your board, would you just do the public the pleasure of appreciating the members that you have recently had resign, so that we can acknowledge how important the work is that you do and the time? So you had Mark Ford.
Yeah, we had Mark Ford recently leave, and we had Donnie McAleer that is resigning, and as well as Dan Greeny.
Yeah, so
Pardon?
so that's a loss to your board.
Correct.
And the replacement is critical to
That's right.
get quality folks that are willing to do what it takes for the town, so.
That's right, and, and part of the reason for folks leaving, I don't think is because of a lack of commitment. I think it was, quite frankly, well, I know it is, because they're very busy in their lives, and in particular, their careers and whatnot, and obviously, we want bright folks like we have on the board right now, actively engaged in this process. And so, of course, when you find folks like that, they tend to have a lot of other things going on, too.
I'd just like to appreciate.
No,
that, so
appreciate,
for,
yeah.
that's my reason for bringing it up. So we appreciate you, and we will work really hard on getting quality
We
folks
appreciate that.
into this town. We've got to be the cheerleaders for the town to do that.
That's
better.
right. Thank
Okay.
you.
So we will take this under advisement, and I look forward to having further conversations in regards to all of this. So I appreciate your thoughtful analysis of what you see as important, so.
Of course.
Okay.
Thank you very
let's
much.
get into it.
All right, so we'll go ahead and proceed on with reviewing the articles from this special town meeting warrant. The way that we'll do this is we'll read aloud the article. We might summarize some of it, depending upon the length. And then we'll take questions from the advisory board, and then, of course, to the public, and then we'll move on to the next article, moving through everyone until we get to the end. All right.
Thank you.
So we'll begin with Article 1. Will the town vote to approve an expenditure of $15,056.53 from free cash and from sewer, water, and solid waste retained earnings, or transfer from available funds a sum of money for payment of unpaid bills incurred during the previous years as set forth on the below listing of unpaid bills, or take any other action relative thereto? So this appears every special town meeting, Mr. Maresco, correct? Where there's always a list of bills where we've, well, let me actually ask you to walk through it. You probably do it better justice than I will.
No problem, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Yes, this is a very typical bill. What happens, these are bills that come in at the end of the fiscal year after June 30th. When they come in after June 30th, the only mechanism is to bring them before town meeting. Town meeting has to approve the expenditure, and it requires a 9/10 vote.
And it's June 30th because of the fiscal year for the town.
That is correct, sir.
Okay. So when we look at bills like this, for example, Zoll Medical, it says the date on it was December 27th, 2023. So so that would have been in the fiscal year 24 budget, right?
That is correct. So, as you saw last time, we have a new treasurer and town accountant, and they went through everything, left no stone unturned, and we found that there were bills that were missing. We had to reach out to the vendors. The vendors then resend the bill. We can't pay a bill unless we actually get the physical bill. Then it goes in through the process, through the munis process to be paid. So because those bills are that old, they have to, this is the only mechanism to be able to pay for them.
Okay, so these, because most of these bills look like they're pretty old, they go back to, obviously, one in December 23, and then you have a handful here from May of 24. I'm assuming that these are bills that, to your point that you just made, were found through just going through all of old AP or accounts payable, and
That is, the older bill is, some of these other bills that came in May of 24, they may have not made it, they may have not, the money may have not been encumbered, the departments never put the bills through, there's a whole myriad of reasons, but until that point is satisfied, the bills can't be paid. Once the points are satisfied, they meet financial muster, there's money to pay those bills. In this case, the bills are late because they weren't paid by the end of the fiscal year. They have to come to town meeting. Town meeting approves it, 9/10, and then the bills get paid.
And you mentioned earlier that, a minute ago, that some of these bills, or that you had found bills that had not been received yet, or that you had to reach out to the vendor directly. Could you tell me which one of these were ones where we had to go and ask them for the bill? And is there any kind of
All of these bills, we had to chase down the vendor to get an actual bill. See, an invoice is not a bill. Some people send an invoice, it's not. A bill is request for payment.
Okay, so we had the invoices, we didn't have the bills directly from the,
Actually, we receive statements from the vendors. We're not receiving the actual invoices. So
Okay.
we receive a statement that an outstanding invoice has yet to be paid. So then we have to reach out to the vendor to actually obtain the original or a copy of the invoice that was submitted in order to pay. We don't pay off a statement, we pay off of invoice.
okay, so this is the equivalent of if I got a statement at home saying, why didn't you pay this bill? And you're like, what bill? And so you got to call in and ask for a copy of the bill.
That is correct.
Okay, all right. Any other questions?
Yeah, last town meeting, we were over 90, and 130,000, we're down to 5 at 15, so the work is showing some fruit.
That is true, sir. We're making progress.
Any other questions from the advisory board? Any questions from the public? Seeing none, we'll move on to Article 2. Article 2, will the town vote to amend the Marshfield Town Code Division 2 General Bylaws, position classes and compensation schedules by deleting the existing Schedule A general government positions and Schedule B part-time and seasonal positions, and adding a new Schedule A general government positions and Schedule B part-time and seasonal positions as set forth below. Schedule A, full-time exempt positions, including administrative assistant, veteran agents, assistant animal control, COA van driver, office manager, benefits manager, project coordinator, and various other positions here. Then we have Schedule B, part-time and seasonal positions, again, listing various positions throughout the town government here and the corresponding range of pay per hour. So the purpose of this article is to remove intermittent police patrol officer position and add a mental health clinician and procurement officer positions to Schedule A, and to make cost of living adjustments to the salaries of Council on Aging and Recreation Department. I do recall some of this discussion from our budget discussions in our marathon 5.5-hour-long meeting several weeks ago. Any questions from the advisory board?
Any cost increase is reflected in the 26 budget, I imagine?
If you could just repeat the question?
Is all the changes, cost of living increases and so forth, all reflected in the 26?
That is correct.
Okay.
And all the items highlighted are the ones that changed?
That is correct. To reflect what people are actually getting paid, the parameters.
Is it possible going forward that we could show what the previous rate was, just so these different positions, we could see what the range was? If it was custodian, 22 to 28, if we could see what it was previously, just going forward?
Yep, we can do that.
Any other questions from the advisory board? Any questions from the public in relation to Article 2? Okay.
Right. I got questions.
Yes, sir.
On the mental health clinician, that was a part-time position, wasn't it?
Well, it's, Mr. Kelly, that's a full-time position. It was approved by town meeting to fund it in FY25. It's built into the FY26 budget for the police
The
department.
town meeting approved it to be full-time in 25,
That is correct.
all right. And then in regards to the part-time and seasonal positions, you have a pay range on the hourly rates, it looks like. Let's just take the custodian, $22 to $28. How come it's, why is it set up that way? How come it's not like a flat rate of an hourly rate?
Because it recognizes years of experience, years of service in the town.
All right, so I mean, when you say recognized years of service, what do you, I mean, how, are they starting out at $22 an hour and the top rate is 28?
That is correct.
All right, so that's all the other positions. So in order to increase it, to my understanding from the looks of it, then you have to bring it forth every town meeting to
That,
pitch it up.
that is correct, sir.
All right, thank you.
I have a quick question, Steve Lynch, 50 Central Street. So procurement officer, what department is that going to be under?
Mr. Maresco?
Procurement officer will come under the town administrator. Because that will be, he'll be a department head or she'll be a department head.
You have no other employees, just one person?
Just the one person, sir.
Can I just ask a baseline question to make sure everybody's understanding? This budget is prepared based on the expectations of receipts that we know of now, but takes into, there's nothing accounting for any potential loss of grants or anything else that might come our way. Is that correct?
That's correct.
I think there's one article that mentions loss of grants, require funding.
I'm a veteran.
I think
we'll see it.
No, I meant the whole, sorry, I was just,
If, Mr. Chairman, if I may, just further want to respond to that. So if you were concerned about MBTA, the loss of MBTA grant money, that particular fund of money does not go into the operational budget. Those would fund specific items. If at some point there was a grant, so for instance, I'll use the harbor, we had to dredge the harbor. It's 5 years down the road, we have to re-dredge the harbor, and there's no resolution on the MBTA, which means that we're not going to be getting state grants to mix with town money to be able to do that. Then we would have to look towards budgetary to be able to do that, because then it becomes a public safety issue. That's the only time the MBTA funds. They don't fund the operational section of our budget.
great, thank you.
All right, move on to Article 3. Article 3, will the town vote to amend the Marshfield Town Code Division 2 General Bylaws, Chapter 188 Personnel by adding a new paragraph for paid parental leave as follows. I won't read this entirely because I probably won't, I'd have to read it line by line here, but what this is that it's an article that inserts into the town's personnel bylaw the concept of paid parental leave, which is now required by state law. The leave allows a benefit afforded to the town's union's employees to be shared with bylaw or town employees. This is being proposed by the Select Board. Mr. Marsko, can you summarize what's in here for us as far as what this means for our employees and who exactly it impacts?
So this is for all of our employees that don't fall into a union. The unions had this language now in their contract, so we want to be fair to our bylaw employees. So we have a number of department heads that are bylaw employees that don't fall under contractual agreements, and we want to be fair to our employees so that they can, if they choose to have a family and need to take time off when they have their child, this program's available to men and women.
And Mr. Marsko, is this, it says in the explanation that this is required by state law. From what you just said, it sounds like almost like it's a little optional. Maybe it's probably the wrong way to frame it, but help me understand what's required by law and what are we putting in as a matter of doing the right thing for our town employees.
It's not optional. It is required by law now. I don't know the exact nuances. I would certainly turn to town council to, discuss the legal aspects of it.
The basic tenets of the paid parental leave are contained in the first paragraph. The last line of the first paragraph, allowing the employee to use other accrued time during paid parental leave, are optional provisions. The amount of notice is optional and discretionary with us. And having parental leave run concurrently with family medical leave is something that we've inserted in.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Questions from the advisory board?
Good.
None? Okay.
What's the requirement for the vote on this and the one before? 2/3 on this?
This is a general bylaw. This will be a majority vote.
Sure. Thank you.
And one more question for me, just to make sure that I'm crystal clear. So this lines up almost verbatim with what our union employees have in their contracts?
That is correct. That is what the clerical and supervisory unions have.
Okay. So does it not pertain to other unions that are not clerical or advisory?
The fire union and police union have language. It may not be similar, but our HR director, Danielle Kerrigan's here, and she might be able to shed some light as it relates to.
Right now, supervisory clerical unions are the only ones that have impact bargain this language in there. We're currently integrating it into, I don't negotiate for police or fire, but everybody falls under FMLA. This gives a paid provision for parental leave up to 10 days. So either way, all municipal employees are covered under FMLA, but a paid provision, this is a paid provision for up to 10 days. So it's slowly being integrated into all of our contracts. Right now, supers, clerical, and I believe Department of Public Works have this provision. The goal is to have it universal.
Thank you. And is this is accounted for in the budget that we've already reviewed?
That is correct.
Any questions from the public? Yes, sir.
Steve Lynch, 50 Central Street. So let me just get this clear. So if we have a union employee in this town that doesn't have this in their contract, then this would apply to them. Right? Is that what you're saying?
Mr. Maresco?
Yes, if you're not a union, but if you're a bylaw employee, this particular thing is being added now for bylaw. The supervisory union and the clerical union has this language in their contract already.
But we have other unions that might not have this in their contract, so this would be binding for them?
It would be. We'll get to those points. We'll have to either impact bargain if it's not in their contract now when we're going through negotiations.
Right, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the public? Mr. Kelly?
Mike, in this parental leave, I mean, this is following the state law, but, I mean, is it following the same as what the private sector is? I mean,
I
like myself, I'm getting a chunk of change taken out every week to fund it, some kind of fund on this parental leave. Is this something different, or what are we working with here?
I'm gonna defer to Danielle on this question.
So under municipalities, we're exempt from like a paid family medical leave. So we have accruals.
Hold on, I
that
can't
run-
hear her.
Sorry, is that better? So municipalities are exempt. So what you're referring to is a paid family medical leave, so that's a payroll tax. So your employer tags your paycheck, like you'll see like a small deduction, that's a paid family medical leave, so that's separate. Municipalities are exempt from that. So municipalities don't have a payroll tax that contributes to a paid family medical leave.
All right, so are you saying that municipal or government employees, I guess, in the state are not paying a state tax?
We're not paying a payroll tax. So you are paying, like in your paycheck, if you looked at your pay stub, you have a payroll tax that goes into a paid family medical leave, whereas a municipality does not have that.
Okay, interesting.
Correct. I mean, it is an interesting concept that municipalities would be exempt, but I think the baseline for that is we have accruals that run concurrent. So, for example, a municipal employee could have up to 4 months of banked accruals that they would utilize, whereas in a private sector, you may not have that.
Yes, I mean, I guess what I was asking is that I didn't realize in regards to municipal employees or I guess government employees in the state, that they are not paying a payroll tax like the
Correct.
private sector is?
Paid family medical leave is a payroll tax. So if you look at your pay stub, you're gonna see like something that says like PFMLA. So it'll be like whatever that deduction is, and you'll see that in your like private sector payroll tax if your employer has opted into it, which the majority of private sector employers do opt into that.
So what you're saying is, it's my understanding is that the town, the citizens of the town are funding this. This isn't gonna be like a broadband thing like the private sector does in regards to the state, going to a state fund, I guess, to cover this, right?
Right, like we're not gonna see a payroll tax on us. It's essentially an accrual. So we're banking, the town is giving us paid up to 10 days as an accrual. We accrue like 1.5 days per month under our contracts.
So
So you're front loading.
this will be like an extra expense on the town. Would I be looking at that correct?
I'll defer to the treasurer collector on how you are funding 10 paid family medical leave days.
Mr. Strobel?
Thank you. Currently, it's already built into the budget, so there really is no additional expense.
But if somebody takes off, then we're going to have to replace that person?
It's no different than someone taking a 2-week vacation. It's accruals. They're using their accruals that they've earned. This isn't above and beyond their accruals. In the municipal sector, we're able to roll our sick time, where in some cases in private sector, your allotment has to be used by a specific period of time.
Say that again, Sean?
I said, in our case, we're able to take our sick time and it rolls from year to year, so we're able to keep accruing time. Whereas in the private sector, most employers will cap your sick time accrual. Either you have to use it by a certain period in either calendar or fiscal year, or you lose it. In the municipal world, we're already accounting for that.
All right, so what I'm asking, I guess, is that if someone takes a family leave for an exponential period of time, that their position isn't going to be covered at any point?
Their position, it depends on the situation of the position. If there isn't any capacity to cover it, then we would have to find a means to cover the position, but it's no different than someone taking, again, a week or two of vacation time concurrently.
All right, so I see your point on the vacation. I mean, of course, that's a vacation. This could continue longer than a vacation. Someone could be out a hell of a lot longer than 2 weeks, right?
So under our Family Medical Leave Act, you federally have up to 12 weeks.
Yeah, so you're going to be potentially out with somebody for 12 weeks.
Right,
so-
but just keep in mind that they're compensated with what they have for accruals. So if they've exhausted their accruals, then they would not be receiving any additional compensation.
No, I get that. I'm just
Okay.
looking at if whatever position they may be in, that the town may have to cover it. It might be an expense in the town that we may have to cover that position. So I'm just wondering, is there money allocated for this potential to cover it, or do we have money?
We actually have, believe it or not, we actually have an investment for compensated absences. And that's an investment that, just like your perpetual bond, we've had that invested, so we do have a stopgap measure in the event that there is an additional expense.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to Article 4. Will the town vote to accept the provisions of Mass General Law allowing the town to design and designate a place on its municipal tax bills or motor vehicle excise tax bills, or to mail with such tax bills a separate form, whereby the taxpayers of the town may voluntarily check off, donate, and/or pledge an amount not less than $1 or such other designated amount, which shall increase the amount due, and authorize the establishment of elderly and disabled taxation fund for the purpose of defraying the real estate taxes of elderly and disabled persons of low income, and further that there be established a taxation aid committee consisting of the chair of the Board of Assessors, the town treasurer, collector, and 3 residents of the town appointed by the select board for staggered terms of up to 3 years fixed to identify the recipients of such aid and make rules and regulations necessary to carry out the provision of said law or take any other action relative thereto. Mr. Marsko, can you give us a little bit more of a color into where this came from, why this has popped up now, and the necessity for it?
Sure, the select board chair actually brought this forward to the select board. They voted to approve it. This will give people an opportunity. There'll be a mechanism for them to contribute $1 or more, whatever they want, to help either senior citizens that are having trouble paying their taxes or disabled people that are having trouble paying their taxes. And then the committee that's appointed will review and work with the treasurer collector's office to put a process in place, what the guidelines would be, things like that, how they would get help depending on how much money is brought in.
Is there precedent for this whereby we collect, or we can collect contributions or donate, I don't know what the exact term would be, pledges for particular numbers? Is that something that already has precedent?
Not within our town.
Not within the town? Okay.
Not within the town, but it is done in other communities within the state.
And is it exclusive to disabled persons of low income and the elderly, or does it kind of range the gambit in terms of different?
It ranges, it just depends on what the community's initiative is. For example, in the city of Worcester, they do have 2 areas on their tax bills where you can donate to either education or scholarships, or you can donate to another charity or cause.
Okay. But this one would end up being the responsibility of the town to basically decide how to handle that and to regulate it, so to speak, to manage it, I should say.
I think once this is approved, then a policy would have to be drafted, and then within that policy, criteria would have to be developed in order to make a determination as to who would be eligible to receive the benefit of these donations.
And do we have any kind of expectation as far as how many folks we think this would help? What kind of dollar amounts we think that this might generate for that particular cause? Do we have any kind of forecast, or we're just?
I would probably defer that to the chair of the select board who put this forward, because
Sure.
I feel that there's probably a need, but as far as the outreach, as far as the donations are concerned, I'm not able to determine that at this time.
Thank you. I understand Hingham has this policy within their property tax forms, and it's been very successful. They call it round up, because you're rounding up, and it's an opportunity for folks to be generous into this particular project. But I don't have the actual figures of where they are, and perhaps that would be a good benchmark for us to look forward. And if this passes, then other towns would be able to be used as maybe a template for how Marshfield may or may not be able to work this through. So
How many bills, Mr. Strobel, do we send out on an annual basis? And I realize you might not have the exact number, but just humor me and kind of order of magnitude. Because this would apply on every bill, whether or not it's a utility bill. Would it apply to utility bills?
I believe that this is just solely designated for real estate bills.
Just real estate and motor excise, which is, right, it says, or motor vehicle excise tax bills. Or is it both? Or, no, I guess it says or, so it's one or the other, right?
Yeah, I think it's going to be one or the other, but I believe if we build this into the shell of the bill that goes out, so we do a semi-annual billing with 2 quarterly tear-off coupons to be submitted, so we're roughly looking at approximately $12,000 just in real estate and approximately another $60,000 to $80,000 in motor vehicle excise tax.
Okay, so,
About $92,000.
okay, so if every one of those bills, somebody rounded up by $1, that'd be $92,000.
Correct.
Okay.
So there'll be a fund. There'll be a fund that will be administered by a panel of 5 people, I think it reads. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
So when the bills come in, when they come in and they've got the checkbox, they've checked off, how is that going to be? This might be a departmental issue, but how is that going to be managed? Are is somebody in the department going to be handling that, or, it's something extra that's being done? I'm just curious as to what happens once that comes into the town. 'Cause it's not done on the computer. Do you follow what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying. As
Yeah.
far as, is it an automated process to account for the $1 donation or the roundup? That is something that we'll probably have a conversation with our lockbox provider as far as the mechanics as to how to manage the splitting or the accounting for the real estate payment or the water or sewer payment or the excise tax payment versus the payment or the contribution to the fund.
Okay. The other thing to consider on that, and the reason why that might be important, is a lot of people pay their taxes are included in their mortgage. So, that you get your real estate tax bill and you file it instead of, paying it. So probably a good option would be to have another, it would be good to have another bill with that option to pay, like the excise tax.
Correct. Yeah, agreed.
Thank you.
And the funds would stay in a general fund, or would it be revolving? How does that work, or how?
No, that would be a separate special fund. It would not be part of the general fund.
Any other questions?
Can I just ask a question?
All right, let me ask if there's any other questions from the advisory board? Any questions from the public? Mr. Lynch, and then, I don't know who it was online, but we'll go to you right after Mr. Lynch, please,
I got a question too.
and Mr. Kelly. Mr. Lynch, please.
Steve Lynch, 50 cents. Do I have to say my address every time I ask a question?
You've identified yourself once, I know who you are.
So I don't have a question, I have a recommendation. So what you should do is have the board that's deciding who's going to get this money, create a list of people who qualify. And then if you give it to 10 people or 20 people in year one, then you should move down the list, cross them off, and go to the next people on the list so that everybody has an equal chance to get this funding. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lynch. Mr. Kelly?
It was mentioned, I think, Sean, you said policy and criteria. Who's going to be creating the policy, and then is the select board be creating that policy and criteria? And if not, somebody else, but is it going to get approved by the select board? Do we know how that's going to work?
So the policy would be crafted by either the town select board or myself, and town council, and it will be presented to the select board, or if the select board wants to be involved in the draft of that policy, we certainly welcome any suggestions at this point in time.
What would you like to do, Lynn? I mean, this is your,
Madam Chair,
Yes.
it's a little different than that.
Yeah,
Tax Aid
I was just
Committee
gonna
makes
go
the
there.
rules and regulations.
Because it's taxes.
When you adopt a section of the law,
Yes,
you create the mechanism on the tax bill,
yes,
and you're establishing a tax aid committee that has the treasurer collector, the chairman of the board of assessors, and 3 residents at large.
yes.
Those people make the rules, and Mr. Lynch's suggestion is a good suggestion, and maybe that's one of the rules that they'll adopt, but they adopt the rules. Your board doesn't approve them.
Okay, that makes sense to me.
so what you're saying is that once it's instituted, the select board is out of the picture in regards to it.
The select board appoints the 3 at-large residents, so that's how you have a say in what policies they adopt.
Okay, and then, I guess there's gonna be a public list, who gets the funding.
I'm sure that the amount of money that's given out will have to be public. I'm not exactly sure at this moment what information will be public or private. There may be some HIPAA issues if it relates to people that are disabled. But the amount of money that's given out will be public, the number of grants that'll be public, and we'll do whatever we have to do in order to protect the privacy rights of people. I haven't seen this issue yet or dealt with it yet, and it's a new provision, and it's being adopted by a lot of towns now, so, but I expect that there will be some limits on that. The committee will know, but I'm not sure that the names of the recipients will be out there.
Well, it's gonna be in front of a committee, so when this committee here holds hearings, I guess you could say, when they can meet, is it gonna be a public meeting, I guess, when they discuss this stuff?
There will be definitely public meetings by the Tax Aid Committee, but there may be elements of what they say or consider that cannot be public.
All right, so they may not be able to mention a name or amount or.
The nature of someone's disability, the extreme financial hardship circumstances, there might be some information that's not going to be public. But the amounts of the grants, the number of the grants, all will have to be voted in a public session. And we'll respect whatever privacy rights we're obligated to respect.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Those are great questions and a great start. Thanks.
I believe we had a question from online.
Hi, yes, Lauren Clapp, Foxhill Circle. I was just wondering what the process would be for distribution of funds, so.
Mr.
Can you hear
Galvin?
me okay?
Yes, thank you, Lauren.
So this will be determined by the Tax Aid Committee if this passes. They'll create a policy as to how the funds will be distributed, and Mr. Lynch's suggestion is as good as any. I'm sure that they'll come up with one that probably incorporates something very much like that. So that committee will make the rules and regulations, establish the criteria, decide whether someone can apply in consecutive years, all of those things. There'll probably be a minimum or maximum income, but you're going to be talking about hardships. So that's why I said some of the information will be private and protected.
Thank you, Mr. Galvin. Any other questions from the public?
Yes, I have a question. Michelle Jarvis, Neptune Road.
Thank you, Michelle. Go ahead.
Hi, what is the limitations on forming this committee in order to make sure that these funds are distributed in the fiscal year that they are taken in by donation.
I'm not sure that there's a requirement that all the money get expended every year. It'll be kept in a segregated fund, separate and distinct from the rest of the town funds. But I assume it's all dependent on how much money we take in via donation. If we receive $2,000 and they want to make 10 grants of $200, or that's what'll happen. If they want to give it all to one, and because there was only one applicant, that could happen. If they want to only give 1,000 of the $2,000 they have out, I think they'll have that discretion too. But they're going to come up with a set of rules and regulations. Those will be publicly discussed, debated, and agreed on by that tax aid committee. And I think everybody that's a resident will have input at that meeting into that policy.
Sure, I understand that, but my question was, what is the grace or the time appropriated for that committee to be created if this is approved?
It becomes a permanent committee of the town that exists as long as we continue to have this law on the books. So it would be a permanent volunteer committee with 2 professional people and 3 residents at large.
I think her question, though, was what is the time frame look? I mean, does it take a year to put together that committee? Is it a month, or how does?
I mean,
just a little. I mean, not getting totally into the weeds. But
this could be done in a week if we were so motivated to do it. I think that the board would probably want to have volunteers interview the volunteers and select people that they trust and think will do a responsible job. So I'm sure there'll be some vetting process for the select board, but 2 of the members of this tax aid committee are already determined by the statute. That's the chairman of the board of the assessors and the treasurer collector. So as quickly as the select board can pick those 3 residents, they'll begin their work. And it'll appear on the next following tax bill if it passes.
So the timing is a matter of how quickly the select board picks and appoints the folks that will serve on those 3 seats.
I agree with that.
Okay.
I have a comment. As the chair said earlier this evening, is about a precursor to the town hall. This particular article is to vote on a concept for this article. All the questions around what's the nuts and bolts of the article, who's on the committee, how long is it going to take? I foresee this one being a large discussion at town meeting without having a lot more meat in this article.
Ms. Costello?
Just a question. It's limited to elderly and disabled residents only?
Yes, that's correct.
Just because I heard hardship, and I just wanted to...
Yes. Yes.
All right, any other questions? Mr. Pesovich?
Joe Pasevich, Wilson Road. If you were looking for 3 citizen volunteers to serve on this board, what if you can't find them? If you got 1, would the board then have a quorum and start operating?
Mr. Galvin?
You'd need at least 1 volunteer for a 5-member board to have a quorum. All votes a majority vote in a 5-member board that's not a land use board.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, we're moving on to Article 5. Article 5, will the town vote to authorize the select board to lease on terms and conditions acceptable to the select board and approved by town council the following land located off of Proprietors Drive shown as parcel Echo 0901128 for a sum of money to be determined by the select board in accordance with applicable law for up to 20 years for purposes of the development, installation, and operation of A, additional solar power electric generation facilities to provide electrical energy to the town of Marshfield, including directly to buildings, energy storage equipment, electric vehicles, and/or electric vehicles charging stations located on the site and/or to the town via a net metering agreement. B, solar energy canopy and charging stations. C, a battery energy storage facility and associated equipment, including but not limited to fuel cells or batteries to store and provide electrical energy for the town of Marshfield and/or to a third party under an approved rate. D, electric vehicle charging stations to provide electrical energy for the town of Marshfield and/or to a third party under an approved rate, or E, any combination of the above. And further, to authorize the Select Board to grant a non-exclusive easement for reasonable access for the purpose of constructing, installing, operating, and maintaining a solar energy array and other equipment to provide electrical energy directly to town buildings, energy storage facility, electrical vehicle charging stations, electrical vehicles located on the site or elsewhere, and/or via net metering and the purchase of solar power, or to take any other action relative hereto. The explanation provided is this article authorizes the lease of town-owned land also being used as the site of the dog park for solar PV arrays and carports for a period of 20 years. This is being proposed by the Select Board. Mr. Maresco, can you provide us some background on this article, please?
Yes, this is an opportunity. So most dog parks should provide shade. So this would be a unique experience. NextGrid, who is the photovoltaic consultant that's been working with the town, we had a discussion going back a few years ago about when we first brought forward the dog park, about putting carports in there. It would be one of the first dog parks in Massachusetts anyways to have carport screening. So we'd be able to provide shade for the dogs and for their owners, as well as generating green electricity.
How does this provide shade?
So if you've been to the police station, you've been to the fairgrounds, they have carport arrays, and the carport is just that. It's a steel structure. It has steel poles. It has a roof membrane, and then the panels sit on top of that, and they provide shade. Most of the 80% water doesn't come through. In certain areas where the grids are, it is open, and it would keep snow out, so it would provide shade, for the animals and things like that.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask. I was a little confused about. Is this shade for the animals or shade for the cars?
No, it would be shade for the animals. That's what makes it unique. It would be in the dog park.
In the park itself?
That's correct.
And does it cover the entirety? Because the park's pretty big.
Won't cover the entirety. I believe there's four structures.
So about half of the dog park area? Okay. Both sides of it? Understood. Questions from the advisory board?
What are the costs associated with building the structure? Is it all funded through the company that's going
That is correct. We don't contribute. They build it.
that amount of square footage? Is there an estimate on the benefit revenue-wise?
Fred, do you remember how much? We'll have to look because their prices were from a few years ago, and things keep changing. I don't really want to throw a figure out, but maybe, Fred, you think 20,000 a year? Yeah, in the ballpark. That would get you in the ballpark, about 20 grand a year.
So this is an article to authorize the select board to lease the property. Does it authorize the select board to enter into an agreement with an energy company, a PV company, a photovoltaic company?
We already have the company, NextGrid. So, but yes, the select board would enter a lease. You'd have to have a lease. So the way to get the lease, you have to go to town meeting. Town meeting has to authorize the select board to enter into a lease.
So is town meetings already authorized the construction of these these PV arrays on at this dog park?
They will after town meeting if they vote in favor of this article.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I understand fully what we would be approving if this were to be approved. Is it's not just the leasing, it's literally the leasing plus all the entire contract that goes with that service that's being provided by the PV company.
That is correct.
Okay. Yes.
And how about the particulars of which of these services and, facilities would be, because we can do one or the other, or a combination, et cetera, how will that be determined? Also voted at town meeting, or is that the select board that?
Well, so the company, when they do their proposal right now is to put these 4 units, 2 on each side. We have a large dog area and a small dog area. The only other component is if they want to do PV charging stations for cars, for people that come in their electric vehicles to charge. So that will be up to NextGrid if they're, everything's dependent on what the energy companies offer for packages. You know, people may remember a while ago in the fall, we were going to upgrade Town Hall parking lot with level 3 charges, which are the real fast ones. We were in the queue. The problem is there were so many other people in the queue. Because there were so many people, they were not able to fulfill that, so we couldn't get it. So it's only dependent on, because that was no cost to us to get that. So anyone that has an electric vehicle that charges out front right now, that's a level 2, and we're in the process of changing those to people will have to actually pay. When we got those 5 years ago, you were required for the first 3 years, it had to be free. That was part of the promotion. The state gave you those, and now one stopped working, and those will be replaced with level 2s right now, and they'll be very much like the ones that are at the police station. It's a good example. The police station has the level 2s. They don't have level 3s.
Mr. Maresco, you said that any expenses would be borne by the provider of these, the PV and PV services. I'm assuming you have some sort of a sense, or the select board has some sort of a sense after proposing this as to exactly what the net financial benefit on an annual basis looks like?
That is correct. If the NextGrid will give us a proposal on what that is. They did give us a proposal a couple of years ago, and it's around the 20,000, but I don't want to commit to an exact number till I have them rerun the number. That's going to be dependent on what's offered by Eversource, which is our provider in this area, what type of grants, what the cost will be to them. But they bear the cost of building the structure. We don't build the structure. We will derive revenue from the structure if it's approved. If town meeting approves and authorizes the select board to do the lease, that's the piece of it in order to do it.
In the 20,000, is that a per month, per year?
That would be per year.
20,000 per year to cover half the dog park?
As far as the bid process, are there multiple entities that bid for these type projects? Because you mentioned one a couple times.
So we went out to bid a long time ago. It's hard to remember. In 2018, we went out to bid. NextGrid wasn't the bidder. NextGrid was in partners with a company that was the partnered with the company that had the original bid, Mary O'Donnell. I can't think of the name of her company at the moment. She then sold out during the process. Where the first project that was approved, and Sean Patterson and I just signed off on the final paperwork from 2019, is to put photovoltaics on the Cap landfill. And that will generate about $1 million a year of revenue for the town for the next 20 years. If this is approved by town meeting, this will be a second project, much smaller in scale, of course.
So
Oh, sorry. Other than NextGrid, is there anyone else who could bid on this? Or is it part of like a package deal?
It was part of a package. A whole bunch of people bid at that time. Amoresco, Citizens Energy. There were like 7 companies that bid at that time.
and when did you say this was? You said it was 2018
I
or
want to say it was 2018, 2019, somewhere. It was pretty far back.
So since that was pretty far back and it was almost 6 years ago, would it, to me, it begs the question of, has market conditions changed where we should expect that other entrants into the market or others would be interested on bidding on such a project? Would you agree?
Possibly.
Okay, but so to make sure I'm clear, we're going off of information here. The assumption is that we'll take information compiled during a procurement process almost 6 years ago, to move forward with that particular company. I guess I would, yeah, that's my question. Okay, thank you.
And this is a type project a procurement officer would oversee?
That is correct. For all of our departments.
Why wouldn't we, sorry, I'm going to just beat this a little bit more. Why wouldn't we go back and put it back out to a procurement process before moving forward here?
We can.
Mr. Galvin? We will. Okay, so the assumptions that we're making right now are based upon an old procurement, but in order to move forward, we'll have to go through a new procurement to select a new provider.
It depends on whether there was capacity on what the original bid was, but more likely than not, this will have to be rebid. That's why the language is there in accordance with applicable law.
When you say capacity on the original bid, can you clarify?
I don't have all the details here, so you can't, I'd need the original agreement to see it, but there was a certain capacity that this company was going to supply, and I'm not sure they've supplied that full capacity. So,
If they haven't supplied the full capacity, does that mean they have first right of refusal?
no,
Okay, so we could still bid it out.
I think we should.
So why would there be any circumstance where we wouldn't?
I don't know that there wouldn't be.
Okay, I'm sorry, I was just a little confused with the answer. It sounded like there may be a situation where if they weren't at full capacity, then perhaps we could run through them.
I think we'll have to take a look at that, but the reason I put the words "in accordance with applicable law" is because I expected there to be compliance with Chapter 30B,
And Chapter 30B is?
the procurement laws.
The procurement laws, okay.
Correct. I specifically added that language because I expected us to comply with procurement laws.
Thank you. Other questions?
No.
Other questions from the public? Mr.
Steve,
Kelly? Oh, Mr. Lynch, sorry, go ahead.
So Bob, is there, in those procurement laws, is there a time limit on after something has been agreed to, that it must be executed?
Mr. Galvin, you can answer that.
Honestly, I don't remember the terms of the original bid and how they were selected, so I can't answer that question, but I'd be happy to look at it and provide Mr. Lynch the direct answer to that question.
Thank you. Mr. Kelly?
I may have missed it at the beginning. Are we doing the solar covers in the parking lot? Or planning on to? Is that part of the plan?
The plan is for 4 units at the dog park, 2 on the large dog park section and 2 on the small dog park section.
Isn't there a parking area?
There is a parking area, yes.
Are we doing that as well?
No.
Is there a reason we're not doing the parking area?
The parking area, if you're familiar with that area, it's pretty narrow when you come in. If you put the units there, it would make it even narrower, and it could create a safety issue, that's why.
Okay. And then the funding that we're gonna be getting from the power generated, where is that gonna go?
Mr. Galvin?
We're not going to get any money from the power that's generated. We're going to get a lease payment. That's what we're going to get.
Oh, so just the straight up,
We're going to get a lease payment only. We're leasing the land to a solar company if this goes through, and we're going to get a lease payment. And that's what we will receive from this.
So if we get a lease payment, and how do we ensure? I guess the question I'm trying to ask is, and forgive me if I'm kind of thinking through it as I say it, but how do we ensure that the town's getting I call it quote unquote a good deal, right? In the sense that
By complying with procurement laws.
well, so help me walk through the situation here, right? So I understand from Mr. Maresco that we went through a procurement activity back in 2019 that kind of informed bringing this to town meeting. From that, the assumption is that the PV company, the photovoltaic company, is going to come forth with a proposal where they'll say, okay, town of Marshfield, we're going to write you a check every year for X dollars. Maybe it's 20,000, maybe it's whatever, right? And that they're not paying that for nothing, right? They're not paying us $20,000 a year because they're good guys. They're doing it because they're getting paid for the electricity that's generated on the land and, I'm sure they're generating a profit and all of that. What is the process to ensure that what we're getting is not a deal where, and I'm being extreme here, so you'll have to forgive me, but that where, the PV company is netting gross margin of $100,000 to themselves every year while they only had to pay us a $20,000 lease payment?
All of our leases that we've ever had, regardless of whether they're a solar lease or any other type of a lease, have an escalation clause on an annual basis. Sometimes they're tied into the consumer price index. Sometimes they're tied into other factors. We will absolutely make sure that there'll be an appreciation in the lease payments over the course of a 20-year term. We may not, if the price of power goes up twice as much, will that necessarily translate into us getting twice as much rent? Probably not, because our lease is going to be tied into the market rate of the land, not the market rate of the power. You'd have to do a completely different deal, and we would actually have to construct the facility ourselves in order to share in that type of a gain. Some of the original leases that were done did have a sharing clause in them, but those are not customary anymore. Now they're more a traditional lease with a escalation factor in it on an annual basis.
And what would be our out if, we're talking about a 20-year lease, if I remember
Yes.
correctly, right?
Yeah, that's the most the law would allow.
Okay, so we'd look at a 20-year lease, but to your point, if 7 years into it, the market conditions have changed considerably favorably in the direction of the PV company, and their profitability goes through the roof, and we decide that, this would be better if we were to put it back out to bid, get a better deal from a leasing perspective. What would stop us from doing that?
The terms of a lease and a contract and the threat of a breach of contract action.
So why wouldn't we consider having some sort of a lease that had an ability to, exit at year 10 or something like that? I guess.
You probably would not find a single company that would negotiate that term with the town.
Because of the infrastructure that they had to investment.
They're taking the risk
Yeah.
that the price of power will remain a constant or escalate reasonably sufficient to pay us the rent. And if the market drops in the power industry, they're not going to get out of paying us our lease. So they're the ones with the risk. We're the one getting the constant lease payments with an escalation factor in it. It's not customary in my experience to be able to go, okay, they're making a much more money in year 7. You got to all of a sudden renegotiate a complete deal. That's not the nature of a 20-year lease deal. I've not seen it that way. That doesn't mean it couldn't be asked for, but the answer is likely to be no. We're the ones taking the risk, whether it goes up or goes down, but we're agreeing to pay you this sum certain every year, plus an escalation factor. And I think that's what you would hear even from any lawyer that's negotiating these deals now.
So your point, if as I understand correctly, is that they carry the upside, but they also carry all the downside.
They carry all the downside, and they're responsible for decommissioning the facility at the end of the 20 years.
And what does that mean, decommissioning?
It means removing all of the infrastructure, utility lines, restoring the property to its original condition.
So literally, they'd remove the poles, the panels, everything, and just.
Typically, within 90 days of the conclusion of the lease term, regardless, if they breach the lease term, there will be penalties in favor of the town, too. So in year 7, if the market drops out of the power industry and they want out, there'll be a significant penalty for them to get out. They won't be able to just terminate it. They'll probably owe us all the remaining lease payments in order to get out. So again, that's part of the risk, and that's the way these leases work. Typically, the decommissioning is done within 90 days. When we enter these leases, we also require them to post a bond because we want that company that's financially viable now to have a surety, and the town has a surety that they're going to remove these costs. And we use an outside expert to value what that surety would be, and that money is placed with us in advance of the commencement of any work so that we know that if they fail or the lease ends, we have the resources to be able to remove it.
And who's our expert that we appoint to determine the value of that lease? It is versus other opportunity costs that may be taken?
Well, we've used outside engineering firms that are familiar with the cost to construct these facilities, to project what the future cost to remove those facilities were, understanding the elements that are involved, the products that are used, the conditions that occur, and they make a projection as to what that cost will be in 20 years, and we reduce that down to a present value, and that's the amount of the surety they'll pay, plus a contingency, usually 1.5 times the cost to remove.
Is 20 years the normal market?
Yeah, most companies will not invest in a facility like this unless they can have at least 20 years. That's the norm. And they'll typically ask for the ability to extend, but that'll be a town option. And it's also customary that the town will be given an option to purchase the facility at the end of the 20 years if they don't want it, and then we'll have a time period to choose whether we want to purchase it, in which case, if it's a viable technology and we're still making money, we will have to make a financial decision in 20 years.
Thank you, Mr. Gavin. Other questions from the public? Mr. Kelly, and then Mr. DiCristofano.
All right, so obviously bringing up the lease part started a whole new conversation, which was good. It was interesting. So, all right, 20,000. The whole thing is that we still could tie in regard, because I think 20,000 is low in my opinion for what they're getting. But we also could, depending on what happens, and especially if we bid this out, we could base it on how much power they get. That we get money out of that as well, right?
Well, I couldn't tell you what the fair market value of the lease would be, but there are appraisers that could tell us that the minimum amount of money we should get for this would be X number of dollars.
Okay.
And I'm certain that we would consult with those people to make sure what they are proposing to us is fair and reasonable. And it's customary in a bid process to establish a minimum price so that we're not fooling around with something that we don't want to have on our land for less than a certain sum of money. When the town has sold properties in the past, if we've done that, we always establish a minimum bid price. And I'm certain that in an RFP, if that's where we're headed, that's what we would do.
Go ahead.
I know, there's been a lot of talk, so I've gotten a lot out of this. But what I have gotten, really, the takeaway for me is that the select board will be able to get into the weeds and really delve into this. And our town council just set up the mechanisms for that to happen and explained it all. So while we go forward on this or don't go forward on this, I think that this has been a perfect example of how many questions and how much time one particular article can take for us to get all the answers.
Well, you could be dealing with that town meeting too, so.
I know, I think this is excellent, so, but the select board to lease on terms and conditions acceptable to the select board and approved by town council. I mean, that's really, as we see right now, that's not enough. We need to know all the other details, and those details will come as we move forward.
Oh, I don't disagree.
Right?
Right. I think
but
Rick
the
brought up some good
benefit,
points
I
and all that and everything, so.
Yeah, I
mean,
know. So I think that this has been delayed a few times, right? So the benefit to this actual article is, yes, shade for the animals, yes, a portion of revenue to be determined, and yes, we have other benefits to this, right, Steve? I don't know about the security within the site and how that could play within that structure, but there are, I would totally agree, we just spent a considerable amount of time on this, and I just think it's good, so I haven't said anything, so there it is.
Is there gonna be a maintenance fee?
They'll be responsible for maintaining their structures, keeping it in good working order, and there wouldn't be any other maintenance fees.
All right, and then, I know the discussion in regards to, them being, whoever's the provider, the installer of this, the beneficiary, I guess you could look at it. So if they file bankruptcy, we're still gonna be covered in regards to equipment being removed,
That's why we get the surety in advance.
okay, just wanna make sure of that. All right, thank you.
Paul?
Following on to what you say, reading through the article, and I've heard a few words of a straight lease deal, and I've heard the term sharing. So this does not, but I see a lot in the language about hooking up equipment and buildings in the town of Marshfield.
Yeah.
There is or there isn't a shared savings on the electrical generation above
So
and beyond the land lease?
the way this article is worded, the power company that might lease this property from us to put this type of facility in can use that property and sell it back to the town of Marshfield. It can provide energy to town buildings. It can use it to power electric vehicles somewhere else. The trend in the industry now is to have battery storage systems that are remote to these facilities that store power. Those are all the places where the power that this facility generates can go.
But all the megawatts generated is to the power company. There's no shared
We do not,
distribution to the town.
my expectation would be is they're not going to want to share that revenue with us. They're willing to pay us a lease payment only.
Okay, so we're just leasing them space to put a photo.
Correct.
Okay, I got it.
Other questions from the public? Mr. Pesevich?
Hi, Joe Pasevich, Wilson Road. I suppose maybe this has been run by the planning board or the building department. Do they have any input on this, or will they have any input on this?
Mr. Galvin, sorry.
In all likelihood, they'll need some type of a permit from likely the zoning board of appeals in order to put this in, because this use isn't a use that's allowed by right, depending on the size. So there'll definitely be a building permit, there'll definitely be electrical permit, there'll be an interconnection permit for the utility into the grid, and there'll be likely a local permit from one of our land use boards.
What concerns me, Chair, as a resident, is we've heard the figure $20,000 lease. I would presume payment to the town. I would presume that was sort of calculated based upon, what the power that would be generated. But I haven't heard exactly what it's going to look like or how big this is. Do we have a definitive size on this thing?
I believe what the chair
What's it
heard.
gonna look like?
I believe what the chair heard earlier is that we anticipate that it would cover about 50% of the total park area, meaning not including the parking lot, but the actual park area. As far as for a visual, I don't know that we have one on hand tonight, do we?
We don't have one on hand, but it would look just like the units that are at the police station.
There's a lot of units there. I hope it wouldn't be as much as the police station. The problem I have is that there's a lot of possibilities here. We don't know how big the units are going to be. We don't know if it's going to be going into wires on poles. We don't know if it's going into battery storage units. We have none of this information, so we have no idea what it's going to look like and what the impact is going to be. To me, this is a cart before the horse. They should be getting proposals, RFPs, from different power supply companies and new ones, and then bring it to the town so the town can then authorize the select board to sign a contract. This is the cart before the horse. We don't even know what we're getting, what it's going to look like, or what we're going to get out of it in terms of revenues. So to me, it's like you got to go RFP first. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pasevich.
There's no need to put out an RFP if the town is not willing to lease them the land.
No, I understood, but we're not here for debate tonight. We're here solely for questions, but thank you for the questions and comments. Any other questions from the public? All right, seeing none, we're going to move on to Article 6. Article 6, will the town vote to transfer the sum of $4,574,517 from certified free cash and disperse such funds for the following items detailed in the chart below, or take any other action relative thereto. There are a total of 26 items here, again, adding up to the little over $4.5 million. This article is, the explanation here seeks authorization to make these budget transfers to cover the cost of certain budget items and/or capital expenses. Mr. Maresco, can you give us a little bit of a flyover here as to where this has come from, why these were added, why they're coming from free cash? Also specifically what our free cash balance is right now, what this leaves us with after they're removed? And does that free cash that's remaining comply with bylaw, town bylaws requiring the 2 to 8%?
Okay. I will defer to the treasurer collector for what the balance is.
So the free cash balance after the December special town meeting was $4,690,867.63. After the allocation of this article, the free cash remaining balance will be $100,882.11.
And is that balance that's left over, my understanding is the town bylaw requires us to maintain a free cash balance between 2 and 8%, is the agreement?
I'm not aware of that agreement. I would have to refer back to what it is that you're looking at.
Town council, do you remember, this is an agreement that was signed back in I'm going off memory here, 2020, 21, 22, that was signed by the board maybe a year or two ago, the select board, agreeing to, I believe it's part of our financial, what's the term for it? I'm sorry? No, it's the financial guidelines for the town. And it requires a certain amount of free cash.
So we have to move on.
You know
I
what I'm-
think, Mr. Chairman, you're referring to the percent that we should have in stabilization.
No.
I'm not aware of any free cash requirements, because free cash is different every single year. So free cash, once the state certifies, we close the books on the June 30th. There's a couple of weeks in July where you continue to pay your bills. Then the town accountant goes through and the treasurer zeroes out all the red. They file the appropriate paperwork with the Department of Revenue, and then the Department of Revenue then certifies sometime end of September. Usually by the end of September or beginning of October, they'll certify what we have available for free cash to spend.
Thank you. I'll connect offline after I find that. Questions from the advisory board? On any of these items in particular? Could you go over just a few from me while the advisory board's preparing here?
Absolutely. So free cash typically is all one-time expense. We don't grow personnel from free cash, because when free cash disappears, then you're left with the position that you growed, and it can create a big black hole in your budget. So these are all one-time expenses. The first one is jetty repair. As you know, you've heard the harbor master talk many times. We've been working with the Army Corps of Engineers to straighten the jetties so that they're even on both sides. This is one of the match requirements for the work that's going to be done. We have a Wi-Fi system for the Council on Aging. We have, there was opiate settlement funds that were commingled, and now they ended up in the general fund, and then we have to put them back into the opiate settlement. So this is sort of like a pass-through to correct that error. The waterways excise, a prior year transfer, same thing. PEG access, the PEG access money needs to go into a special account, so this will put it into that account. You'll see off to the far extreme right, the $475,000 gets transferred to that line item. Vaccine deficit, those were flu shots from the Board of Health. We have to cover those costs. The municipal software, item number 7, that's a fixed annual fee, $370,000 a year. Police accreditation, there's one errata. Everyone has an errata sheet, so that's the wrong line item. It goes into a special article. School transportation is just that. School Medicaid, covering those costs. School Chromebooks, classroom technology. OPEB, folks, those are post-employment benefits. We have a responsibility to contribute. We should be contributing more, and we'll continue to ratchet up what we're contributing to that. That goes into a special fund You'll see off to the extreme right-hand side, it's transferred to. Harbor Park maintenance, we have the Harbor Park, and that goes to the maintenance of the manicuring the lawn, et cetera, fertilizer, fixing the furniture, any other stuff that goes with that. Security camera server replacement. So for our security cameras, we needed to get a new server, so that would cover the cost of that. Library Sunday hours were open from the last Sunday in March through the first Sunday in June, while kids are doing reports and stuff like that. So the $5,000 will cover that, and you'll see there's the line item that those funds will go into. We're doing some work. The library received a grant from the state, a pass-through grant, so it's being applied to bathrooms. We had to match that, so there's a $20,000 match, and that goes into a special article. There's money for a vehicle lease program. We've been meeting with a lease company, and the town is going to be moving into a lease program. We can get better vehicles at cheaper money and a cost savings to the town. School funding, not on the recap, and that is the same as...
There was with the tax rate recap, there was $250,000 was allocated at the last budget cycle that was not reported on the tax rate recap. That is why the $250 is appearing on the free cash.
Thank you. Next item, item 20, is IT hardware lease, and that's $165,000. That is the certain hardware that we lease. That's the lease payment. Fire overtime, to cover overtime in the fire department. We have some employees. We have an employee that's been out sick since July. We have an employee that we have an issue with, so they're out on disciplinary, so we have to cover that. We had a vacancy. As folks know, when Chief Simpson left, it created a vacancy. The board appointed an acting chief. That then we had to leave a position open because everyone moves up, so you have an acting chief. Then that created a vacancy in the deputy, so then you had an acting deputy. That then created a vacancy in the captain, so then you had an acting captain, and then that created a vacancy in the lieutenant, so then you had an active lieutenant. So in the event that you went through the process and Chief LaSalva at that point was a candidate, he wasn't chosen, and somebody else was, then they all had the ability to go back to those positions. So this covers all those overtime. We also had some vacancies where we hire paramedics, so it took a while to get paramedics. We did hire a paramedic. That paramedic right now, after he was hired, he has to go to the fire academy for training. That's a 10-week training, so while he's not here, we have to pay 10 weeks of overtime. So it adds up very quickly. So those funds will cover the overtime through June 30th. Next item, 22, is Uncle Bud Skate Park. As folks know, we have probably one of the most active skate parks. It's a private group that raises money in the town. This is the town's contribution. They're doing a major reface. They're adding an additional component in the front of it, and we're contributing. They were short about $21,000, so we're contributing the $21,000. That will go to a special fund. Fire station apparatus floor. The main firehouse, there seems to be a depression in the floor. That's going to have to be dug up to find out what it is. We certainly don't want the ambulance falling into that, so that's going to cover that project. We did fire station bathrooms renovations and locker rooms and showers for both men and women. And like all old projects, when they tore open the walls, the bathrooms hadn't been replaced in 40 years. The leaks in the water had rotted through all of the wood, the sills, the floors, the joists, so it added a lot of extra cost, work, and material, so that would cover the shortfall in that. And reserves, there's $900,000 set aside for reserves. Those are shortfalls that may materialize in some of our budget items to insulate us from that. Any of that money's not spent, that just rolls back to the general fund. And then it goes to free cash, pardon me. And then finally, item 26 is IT hardware replacement. So we replace our computers that our employees use on a rotating schedule. This will take care of, I think we do 50 units a year. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Mr. Maresco. A few follow-up questions, and obviously, I think we'll be talking through each of these items in a great level of detail at a upcoming advisory board meeting, preceding town meeting. I wanted to go back to my question earlier and refer to Marshfield Consolidated Fiscal Policy voted May 4th, 2021. It was reaffirmed at the meeting of the Select Board on November 20th, 2023, including James Kilcoyne, Lynn Fiddler, and Mr. Darcy. In that policy, page 7, in regards to financial reserve and stabilization policies, reserve policy number 2 states that the amount of money to be held in free cash shall not be less than 2% or more than 8% of the approved general fund operating revenue less debt exclusions. Can you help me understand how, if we're left with a balance of 100,000, we would still meet that fiscal policy goal?
So with the balance of 100,000, 882.11, with the current free cash allocation, it does leave us with 1.52%. With the approval of Article 7, which is the next article, that is repealing or restoring 250,000 to the free cash balance. So that is going to bring the free cash balance after the approval of Article 7 to 350,882.11, which is 5.29%.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Strobel. The 900,000, item number 25, reserves, can you, I mean, help me understand that. Is it a required percentage that we're mandated to provide, or is that just the amount that your team's, chosen based upon, certain methodologies, or how did we come to that versus another number, $1.2 million or 500,000 or?
So looking at the current spend rate and projecting out, especially with snow and ice being the biggest contributor, we're looking at approximately a deficit of, on the worst case scenario, about 900,000 across all departments in the general fund. This is just anticipation of those shortfalls.
Okay, so there's been a scenario that you've drawn up where you have individual line items saying that we project on the worst-case scenario, this could go up this much, this could, okay.
By looking at the year-to-date budgets currently, we have some departments that are nearly fully expended, and we have another quarter to go. So in some cases, we're going to run into a deficit situation. And through the year-end adjustment or the year-end transfer process, which we start in May, by looking at the different departments, we're looking at that now to get a jump start or to look forward to see if, in fact, we can project out how much those deficits could potentially be and cover that with free cash. If we don't cover those deficits with a free cash allocation now, it will impact our free cash when we go to certify.
Okay, thank you.
Were all of these items in the budgets that we have reviewed with the department heads, or there are some that weren't, that were outside all the combined department budgets?
So all of these items here are not part of their budget. That budget is for the normal operating costs. These are other items, capital items, needs that we might necessarily have to go out to borrow as opposed to using free cash. So a lot of these items are one-time expenses or capital requests.
And they haven't been incurred yet?
They have not been incurred yet.
Other questions from the advisory board?
Yeah, I have a question on item 7 there, Munis. Is that a one-year fee, or is that each year the fee there?
That is a one-year fee.
Okay. Does that include training?
It does, a portion of that does include training.
Okay.
If that's
so next year we'll expect the same 370,000. So
It will start to ratchet down. So the first few years we're paying for the software, the larger portion, and then after we are off of that schedule of paying for the software itself, then it ratchets down as far as the service agreements.
So it's an annual fee of 370,
I believe the annual fee will be,
or somewhere in there. I guess my point is, going forward, shouldn't this be part of the budget?
it will.
That's the part, so why wasn't it in the first place? So again, going back to the consolidated fiscal policy, There's specifically a paragraph in here that says that it is the objective of the select board to not use free cash to pay for ongoing recurring items. So why wouldn't this be done in this case?
Because right now, the purchase of Munis is considered a capital acquisition. We're still in that phase of acquiring the software, and we didn't pay for the software all up at front. It is being financed over a series of years. I believe it's a 3-year commitment at this point.
Okay, so this is paying for the original obligation to buy the software.
Correct. This is the capital portion of the software.
So this does not include any cost or expenses relative to the actual upkeep of the software itself on an annual basis.
With Munis, with the initial 3 years, I believe that it is all capital with some training and along with implementation. And after we're through the first 3 years, the annual fee should go down, and it should be purely maintenance and licensing at that point.
And which year are we in right now? I'm sorry?
I believe we're in the 3rd year.
So we're in the 3rd year. So next year, there'll be something in the budget. Do you have any idea what that would be in the budget?
I would have to go back to Tyler to make sure I know what the number will be for FY 2027.
Do you have any idea? I mean, I don't want to put you on the spot, but like ballpark, are we talking like 100 grand, 50 grand, 300 grand?
I can certainly find out, and I can follow up.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions from the advisory board?
Just curious, on the Munis, at 3 years, we're in this for 3 years. Would you say that all the, say, modules that were purchased with Munis, what percentage of all those modules have now been implemented? You have finance and
I would say probably 30% of those modules have been implemented. 30. So the financial spine has been implemented.
a big one, I understand.
Which is the biggest, that's the driving piece, that's the spine of the network. And then from there, we'll have tax and cash receipts. And then after cash receipts, there's a discussion whether or not to roll on payroll and human capital management.
Okay.
Any other questions from the advisory board? Questions from the public? Mr. Lynch?
Steve Lynch, so I have a whole bunch of questions on this. So, the first one on jetty repair. I don't understand why the town of Marshfield is paying to repair a jetty that's owned by the federal government, that if you look on any chart, navigation chart, it is a federal channel with a federal anchorage area on the inside. Why do we have to match to pay for a federal channel?
Mr. Maresco?
I'm going to defer to Harbor Master Mike DeMayo's here. He would be the expert.
Mr. Mayo?
So good evening. So there's a couple of things with the Green Harbor jetties. It's a project that's been started well over 10 years ago. We first completed the Army Corps Section 216 study, which was the initial phase of study. We're now in the Section 107 study, which has a federal cost share agreement of 50% on the federal government side, 50% on the town side. If you remember from a few town meetings ago, town meeting approved $250,000. The 173 is the balance to complete the modeling to see what actually happens to correct the jetties. Either the east jetty gets extended, it gets elevated, we dig out the channel a little deeper to prevent from shoaling, and then we move on to the 90-10, which the government pays $15 million, and you'll see in the capital, once we get to the annual town meeting, you're gonna see $450,000. That represents half of the $900,000 that the town's going to need for the 90-10 split, when the Army Corps kicks in $15 million to correct the jetties, to hopefully reduce the shoaling that's been happening in Green Harbor since 1969. So this is a big monumental project, and I wish we could go after grant money, but however, currently grants are not available to offset town costs at this time. Be happy to answer any more questions.
So, okay, I understand why that you're doing it, I get that, but the jetty is owned by the federal government. The channel is owned by the federal government. They allow us to manage it. They own it. Why are we paying for it?
Because that is the government cost share agreement that we have to abide by, set by the government. I don't get to set that, Steve. The town has also worked in the federal anchorage before for emergency dredge repairs in the future. This whole process has been going for 10 years, since, almost before,
I
since I've been
understand
there.
all that.
You asked a question, sir, let me finish, and I'll give you the
Or you could direct your
educated
question,
answer.
you can direct your questions and answers at the
Okay.
chair, please. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
So, just to make sure that I'm clear, so the federal government has an agreement with the town, or this is a law that states what portion the local jurisdiction or local entity, town, whatever, is required to pay versus the federal government?
The town is required the federal cost share agreement of 50% of the modeling and engineering of what is going to take place when they complete the study and modeling, which is hopefully this June, July. We'll have that data back to say, hey, we should maybe raise the crest elevation of 4 feet on the east jetty to minimize the flooding, showing migration of sand into the channel. It may say, hey, we should probably dig the channel deeper. So it's going to give us a couple of variable models of what needs to be done for the future to mitigate the constant shoaling of Green Harbor. Green Harbor is the #1 dredge port in all of New England. So we're kind of actually lucky that we're this far in the game, that we actually, Army Corps has actually taken this serious since 1969 to correct the problems that have been there. If you look at the study from 1980, it talks about some of the things that have been occurring out there with sediment transport, the way the sand migrates into the channel. If you look at 2015, 2018, the East Jetty sustained damage for Hurricane Sandy, and in the storm of 2018, there was some breaching of the jetty. The Army Corps did correct that. The Army Corps was here last year and dredged the channel for 60,000 cubic yards. The town also dredged a sum of 9,500 cubic yards. The town of Marshfield at town meeting kicked in $900,000 that money, and we were also awarded $301,000 from state grant funds last year to offset taxpayer costs. So it's not just the jetties, it's everything that goes along with the whole project of Green Harbor. Green Harbor, as you know, is one of the top 4 ports in the Commonwealth for American lobster exports and Atlantic bluefin tuna exports, raking in over $29 million in the last 7 years. And I'd be happy to provide that data to anyone who wants to see it, because that's part of my grants that I push out. So the harbor is very economically viable for the town and the folks that use Green Harbor. So, and the Army Corps has agreed that, hey, this is a project that should probably be looked at and completed, and that $15 million is very much secured. The town just has to contribute $900,000, which I think is a pretty good deal.
Just another follow-up then question, just to make sure I completely understand. This was a project that was proposed by the town or by the Army Corps of Engineers?
It was a project that was proposed by us. However, the Army Corps has to approve half of it. It has to be congressionally funded. It has to be funded through the Army Corps offices as well to be a viable project. We've met all those thresholds to get to where we are now. There are many other communities that don't even get as far as this, to even get the funding that's coming.
So if the town said no, then what would happen?
If the town,
And I'm not talking about what physically happens, but I mean, I'm talking about in terms of our relationship with the federal government in terms of the funding here. Does the federal government just say, okay, fine, don't do it, and they're out? Or
as far as the 173, yeah, they would be pencils down and walk away, and
Okay.
we'd be left with what happens. And then when the channel fills in next year, we'd be trying to figure out how we're going to get it dredged.
Thank you.
Okay, I need some follow-up on this. So I agree with everything that he wants to get done there. Totally, it needs to be done. But it is not on, this is a federal channel that is open to anybody in the United States of America to use. They have to maintain that access to the entire country. It shouldn't be our bill. It's the federal government's bill. So we should make them pay for the whole thing. And then the other question I have about it is the $173,000. So when is that going to be expended?
Mr. DeBayo?
It will be expended before July 1st. That's the balance to complete the study and the modeling that's been going on. And I also briefed this. The Army Corps came to the Waterways meeting a few weeks ago and also briefed the Waterways Commission. I believe it was March 6th, and there was a few fishermen in the room that saw the current study of where we currently stand. And once we have the full data, I'll gladly put it up online and also share it at the next Waterways meeting as we progress. But this is not something that's happened overnight. This has been going on for many, many years.
Thank you. Next question?
So I'm completely for doing it, but 20 years ago, they were paying for it. When I was growing up, the federal government would come in and fund the whole thing, to dredge the harbor, build the jetties, whatever went on. Shouldn't be out, the townspeople shouldn't be responsible. But anyway, so then on to the rest of this. So this article is put forth by the Board of Selectmen. So my question is for the Board of Selectmen. So a lot of the stuff in here, like school department money, fire money, police money, this stuff should be in their budget. This is not where this should be. Some of this is capital expenditures, and some of this is for salaries within their budget. Why are we giving free cash to that? I mean, who negotiated this deal? This is the Board of Selectmen's article. Who negotiated this deal with the school committee that we're going to pay this money to them? They already have an bloated budget. Why are we paying for it out of free cash?
Mr. Maresco?
I'm not asking Mr. Resco. This is a Board of Selectmen article. I'm asking the Board of Selectmen.
I'm sorry, all questions have to go through the chair of the advisory board, and I'm asking Mr. Maresco if he could comment, and if the select board members would like to provide an answer or their own responses after that, then be happy to ask them.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to answer this. So these are one-time expenses. Everything that's in the free cash is a one-time expense. And the school is having some financial challenges this year. As you know, we sat through a number of hearings. These articles, these items that are in this article to help the schools, help to ease some of that financial burden.
Thank you, Mr. Maresco. Anybody from the select board want to add to that? No additions at this time?
So these questions I'm going to bring back up at town meeting. And I'm going to bring them up, and I'm going to ask the Board of Selectmen why we're paying the school department money out of free cash. It should be out of their budget. If they can't stay within their budget, well, that's too bad. The citizens of Marshfield who pay these bills have a right to be able to keep their budget in order also. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lynch. Any other questions from the public? Yes, ma'am.
Pam Keith, Smoke Hill Ridge. I have a question on the 900,000. We have made the statement several times that one-time expenses, free cash, but now the statement's been made by Mr. Strobel that the 900,000 is in anticipation of possible, that we have shortages as much as this much. And to tell you the truth, I'm going to state that I am in disbelief at that type of statement, so I'm going to phrase it as a question. When is the last time we have voted in this town, because I don't remember in like 20 years, ever voting $900,000 in free cash to reserves. I don't even remember voting $100,000 to reserves. But I do think if there is a reserve budget, I know the DPW usually carries one, and it's $100,000. And I think the town might also have carried one that I might see in the annual report. So I don't remember if it would have been voted at some point at town meeting, and it would also be $100,000. Not 900,000. So I'd like to know, isn't this out of the ordinary?
Thank you, ma'am, for your question. Mr. Strobel, do you have any kind of history on what the historical request has been in these? Because this is pretty much comes up twice a year where we allocate from free cash funds. And how often is reserves coming up, and what kind of numbers have we been talking about historically, maybe going back 5 years or so?
I think historically, there's been some detail as far as what allocations were being to what particular lines or departments. For example, snow and ice, whenever there's a snow and ice deficit, that deficit is typically covered with free cash or a free cash item and a free cash article. From looking at the year-to-date budget and the projections, we're projecting that there are going to be some deficits in some of these budgets. And for example, there are some departments, as I stated before, that are overspent, and those costs are due to the increases of supply chain issues, parts, just like your household budgets, our costs have increased as well. So this, unfortunately, is a reflection of where we project some of those deficits to fall.
Can we be provided with an itemized list of where this reserve balance has come from?
Certainly.
Or this request?
Certainly.
Okay. would like, I think from the advisory board position, we'd like to follow up with this on the, at the next advisory board meeting. Any other questions from the public? Mr. Pezevich?
Yeah, Joe Pasevich. Yeah, just to follow up more on the reserves issue, does that itemized list that you just requested, Mr. Chairman, could you find out if that includes contingencies for the school department? Do they know offhand if that's part of that?
Mr. Strobel, is there any contingencies for the school department included in that reserve number of 900,000?
This reserve does not include any contingencies for the school department.
Thank you. Mr. Pezevich?
And transferring into reserves, I mean, it's like giving a blank check to me. That's the way it appears. Is it easier to spend the money out of something called the reserve fund versus spending money out of free cash? Does it require approval from the advisory board?
Mr. Strobel, I think, again, just echoing Mr. Pacevich's question is, what is the process that goes into then taking from the 900,000? In other words, the 900,000 is designated quote-unquote reserves, but how do the rest of us know how that actually gets spent at the end of the day, and who gives the authorization to do that?
So through the year-end transfer process, that is where we are looking at all of the org objects throughout the entire footprint of the town. We then make recommendations as far as those year-end transfers, and part of that process is to detail where the surpluses are. For example, if there's deficits and the surpluses and those org objects can't cover the deficits, then we would look to tap to the reserves. If there is a surplus balance in the reserves, it would roll over to free cash.
Okay, so the reserves, though, if you intend to pull funds from the reserves to pay for X, whatever X is, what is the process for doing that? Is that a process whereby you go before, again, going back to Mr. Pacevich's question, that you're seeking authorization or consensus from the advisory board, the select board, or town meeting?
That is correct. Oh, it's both advisory and select board.
Advisory and select board would be informed of the need to utilize the money from those reserve funds and then utilize it.
That is correct.
And both the advisory board and the select board would vote
That is correct.
to approve or reject.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Nope. One other thing, if I may, Mr. Chairman. There's a transfer, $475,000 from free cash to the PEG access, item number 5. Am I reading that right? You're taking $475 out of free cash and putting it into the PEG access program?
Mr. Strobel?
This is a requirement of the Department of Revenue. We are voting for we have in the budget $475 for PEG access, but according to DOR, we actually have to have the funds in that fund account before we can make that allocation or commitment. So this is to pre-fund the PEG access fund in order to establish that we do have the funds necessary to cover that obligation. And as the funds are coming in from the two carriers, both Comcast and Verizon, that will replenish that fund.
So you're paying we're paying the PEG access up front, and then you expect a reimbursement for that number at what point in the year?
Those funds are received on a quarterly basis. Those funds are sent out to PEG Access or MCM on a quarterly basis.
Because I see, like in the annual warrant, and I don't want to change your subject of discussion right now, but in the annual warrant, Article 7 says the town will vote to appropriate the sum of $475 to support PEG access.
That is correct. But currently what the town is doing is when they're making that commitment through town meeting, there is a balance of 0 because we're paying out what we're receiving to MCM. We actually have to have the balance in the fund when we make that commitment to MCM or PEG access. This is coming from the Department of Revenue. This is their requirement.
I understand that. Could you just get a quick idea of what this is about with the opioid settlement funds previously commingled? I just heard it described as an error. What do we get a settlement fund, Mr. Chairman, and we put it somewhere else, and now we're trying to replenish it? Is that what's happening?
Mr. Strobel?
Yes, so when we received the opioid settlement funds, those funds were placed or deposited into the general fund. Those funds were received prior to the approval of the creation of the special revenue funds. So once town meeting approved those special revenue funds, we now have to take the opioid money that was previously credited to the general fund and now transfer that into the opioid fund itself. Prior to that, it ended up rolling over into free cash.
What's a special revenue fund?
Mr. Strobel?
Special revenue fund is when we receive funds that are designated for a specific purpose, that money is segregated and kept into that account and only utilized for those specific purposes. For example, for the opioid settlement, it is for the abatement and the treatment or support of opioid awareness as well as opioid abuse prevention.
And if I may follow up on that, who determines where that money goes? I know there was a survey put out recently, but is there a board or a committee that says, okay, the opioid money's going to this, that, or the other thing?
There is currently an established opioid committee that reviews applications for grants. Those grants have to meet specific criteria as outlined in the abatement agreements or the settlement agreements for each one of the distributors or manufacturers of opioids or a distribution of opioid medication.
Thank you for your help.
Yes, ma'am.
Camp Keith, I just want to, I had forgotten, when you had brought up the 2 to 8%, which on free cash, which I had actually never heard of before, Mr. Strobel mentioned that we were doing the next article, Article 7, for $250,000 from free cash, but it says stabilization fund, and they're two different things. So I didn't know if the agreement, again, that you were looking at, I'm not clear on where you were reading that from, and if it is solely pertaining to free cash, or does it pertain to just the balance in general of free cash and stabilization?
So that's from the Marshfield Consolidated Fiscal Policy in the section concerning reserve and financial reserve and stabilization policies. And again, it reads that the amount of money to be held in free cash shall not be less than 2% or more than 8% of the approved general fund operating revenue less debt exclusions. So I guess our question is a good question, is there's a difference between the stabilization fund and free cash, correct? And so if this Article 7 is pertaining to the stabilization fund, and thank you for your very good question, ma'am, how would that answer the question that we had asked earlier in regards to free cash?
Well, Article 7 is restoring the $250,000 to free cash.
But it says stabilization.
So it says, when it says down in the explanation, and I know we're kind of intermingling here, Article 7, but the total amount for this project from stabilization was to be $250,000. So you're saying that that would come out of the stabilization fund, where it was going to be allocated the stabilization fund and would go into free cash, or is that just a bad explanation?
So if folks recall, this was before I arrived. Free cash was not certified, so in order to do the free cash allocation for the October 2023 meeting, money was taken from the stabilization. That money was then restored back to stabilization. So in that initial article, it referred to the 250 from stabilization. But realistically, the 250 is actually from free cash.
The stabilization fund, according to the policy here, the town shall maintain the stabilization reserve fund of at least 3% of operating revenues less debt exclusions. Does this present any challenges with that? What is the stabilization fund balance at the moment?
Currently, the stabilization balance is $6.9 million, so I don't believe there's any issue with whether the 250 goes to stabilization or free cash. It's not a material impact.
Okay. And nor can the fund exceed 10% of the equalized value of the town, so that 6 or 7 million just mentioned, that's not more than 10%?
No, it's
Okay.
roughly 5%.
Okay, thank you. And just one more follow-up question on that. If we get to Article 7 at town meeting and Article 7 doesn't pass, then now we're below the 2% threshold, then what?
So according to that same article that you're referring to, there is language in here. It is understood that the town may not comply with this policy in the immediate term as it deals with its current financial crisis, but the expectation is that it will achieve compliance as soon as possible.
Okay. So you'd have to figure out how to restore that.
Correct.
Got it. Okay. Any other questions, Mr. Kelly?
On the COA Wi-Fi system replacement, $20,000, what exactly are we doing there? I mean, it seems like a lot of money just to replace a Wi-Fi system.
So the Wi-Fi system that's currently at the Council on Aging, I believe that was originally installed quite some time ago. When the building expanded, they were using, I believe, Wi-Fi hotspots. Those Wi-Fi hotspots are not adequate to provide the service or the needs for Wi-Fi in that building. So Council on Aging is looking to replace that with a more robust Wi-Fi system that can support tablets, smartphones, laptops, things that people may be using while they're at the COA.
So what exactly is going to be done there for the Wi-Fi system?
I believe it's a complete replacement of the Wi-Fi system in that building. This is a 50% match to that expense.
A 50% match. So it's going to, in total, it's costed $40,000 to replace the Wi-Fi system?
That is correct.
Holy mackerel. On the vaccine deficit, flu shot coded to COVID, can you explain more detail in regards to that, or somebody?
Sure. So an expense that was related to flu vaccinations was coded incorrectly to a COVID vaccine expenses. So in order to make that correction, we have to reimburse or we have to reclassify that expense. And since it's from a prior period, we have to restore that $11,000 that was coded incorrectly to the COVID vaccine. It has to be covered with general fund funds.
So are you saying that we are still, the town itself is still given the COVID shot?
No, that is not correct. We are not giving COVID shots.
The flu shots then?
The town does provide flu shots, that is correct.
And it's costing the town $11,000 to do it?
No, this was an expense that was during the time of COVID. That was commingled with the expenses. From doing an internal audit, we discovered that this was an error that needed to be corrected.
Okay.
Question on that. Sorry to interrupt.
Go ahead.
So is that classified on the balance sheet, or wouldn't it just be reclassed between expenses if it was already expensed? Or was it,
Because it's a prior period, we have to restore it from free cash.
but it was initially posted as a liability as opposed to an expense in previous year?
It was posted as an expense two cycles ago, 2 fiscal years ago.
On the Munis software, I know there was discussion on it earlier, but it seems to be an incredible amount of money that we're spending on it. I mean, what are we looking at going forward? You said it's going to start, like, the price is going to come down, but I mean, what are we looking at in regards to cost? I mean, are we, like, you see with everything else, we're marrying ourselves to this technology that where it's costing us a fortune. I mean, what will, when all is said and done in regards to having this set up and paying what we have to, what's going to be the cost of the town every year in regards to this?
I would have to actually have a conversation with Tyler to determine what the future costs will be. At this time, I don't have that answer for you.
And do we know what they're charging for? Are they doing like a yearly fee on top of the $370 that we're paying right now?
The $370 is all-encompassing, so it is for the capital acquisition, which is financed over a period of 3 years. It also includes service or support, as well as training and support.
And just to ask, is there anything else out there that's equivalent to the software?
There are other software packages, but one that as robust as Munis right now, I don't believe there is much that will satisfy all of the needs that the town has. But certainly, an RFP process would probably identify more potential software packages or solutions that might be appealing to the town of Marshfield, but they all come with a cost.
Yeah, that's for sure. When I was watching, on the police accreditation, when I was watching between the conversation between the advisory board and Chief Tavares, Chief Tavares mentioned that it's an unfunded mandate, I believe. So, in regards to this police accreditation, it is a law, correct?
Yes, it is.
All right, and then, so, and we're showing, I think, what was it in October? Was it like $300 and some thousand we paid for this?
Yes.
And now we're gonna pay another $284 this
So
year?
as part of the accreditation, just, Mr. Chairman, if I may elaborate a little?
Please, Mr. Maresco.
As part of the accreditation and certification process, there is about 159 policies that the police have to be fluent in. Those policies, they learn those policies, then they have to do workshops with the policies, they have to take tests with the policies. All of those activities require the police officers to either come in when they're on patrol and sit in on a seminar. If they call out, then they have to do it over again. Some of them require that they have to take tests. If they have to take tests, we have to pay them, so we have to cover overtime. So those are the type costs that, generate the dollars for the accreditation and the certification process. And, our chief wants both the certification and the accreditation, and this is all a requirement under post. This will be in the very top echelons of police.
So, is the town, can we expect the town going forward every, I don't know, well, it was 300,000 last October, 284 now. I mean, are we gonna be looking at another police accreditation expense come October?
No.
How about going forward after that every year? Is it gonna cost us?
It would be high. I wouldn't have that information right now.
All right. School Medicaid. I don't think I've ever heard of this. Could someone explain this to me?
So the school Medicaid, this is the revenue that the school generates that goes into the general fund. So the town is opting to provide that school Medicaid income that was generated from the school district and allowing the school district to use that for their budget.
All right, and then the school Chromebooks, is that purchasing new Chromebooks?
So that is for the purchase of, I believe, 850 Chromebooks for students. That is correct. It's a one-time cost, capital cost.
And how often do the Chromebooks get replaced?
I would probably defer that to Tom Miller, who's here.
The district's developing a plan. I'm loud. The district's developing a plan where.
Tom, I think the public, even people on TV, want to hear you.
Okay. Actually, it's good to get up. The district has been trying to develop a plan over several years of a replacement system where students that K and 1, they still use iPads, but then the students would have their same Chromebook, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade. It's a 4-year cycle. In middle school, they would get a new Chromebook in 6th grade, have it in 6th, 7th, and 8th. And then they would get another Chromebook in 9th, 10th, and 11th, and 12th. So we're trying to develop some ownership. As you know, middle school students are, they have a tough time treating their Chromebooks appropriately. But what we're trying to do is build that into the budget, a budget cycle, We're not there yet because we do have budget issues, but we've been able to develop that plan through capital, through the original Chromebooks that came into the district were with the high school project. And then we had ESSER money from COVID that was able to supplement some technology. So we've been really been able to move that forward with that through one-time expenditures. But what we really would like to do is develop a system where we have that in our budget and have a plan that takes care of that rolling forward.
How often are you replacing the Chromebooks?
So what it would be purchasing Chromebooks for the second grade class, the sixth grade class, and the freshmen going into high school. So on average, we have at this time, we have about 275 per class, 250 to 300. So 300 a Chromebook times 3, that's where we're getting that number. That's the number that's shown there.
Yeah, but I mean, all right, so is this like a yearly thing you're doing now? I mean, how long?
It's going to be a year. That's what we're trying to build to. We just haven't been able to get there yet, and we've been utilizing one-time funds, and this is another one-time fund that we're receiving to get this done.
So every year you're replacing roughly 800 Chromebooks?
Correct.
No way. What's every year replacing 800?
Because the students would
You can't reuse them, or
no, I mean we don't toss them away, but they're utilized. I mean, there's a lot of loaners too. We have 3,700 students, approximately 3,200 of those students have Chromebooks, but if they make it through the process of a 4-year process in elementary and are still usable, still functionable, we will have them as backups. So we have a lot of backups in the libraries that students who forget their Chromebook, something goes wrong, they need it. It's a necessary item today.
I get that, but that seems like a massive amount of replacement every year, an expense on the town. That is.
It's one of those costs that we had a great discussion with the advisory board on how things have changed over the years and the expenditures, and we talked an awful lot in detail about, yes, our enrollment's gone down rather significantly over the last 15, 20 years, but all the costs associated for those students have just risen. And this is a perfect example right here. When we were in school, we had some paper and a pencil.
Well, yeah, I'm wondering if we should get back to that.
No, I understand. I mean, that's just we're not unique. Every district in the state is doing that.
No, I get that.
Yeah.
But something, I mean, as we see, like here, just with the Chromebooks, and then you got classroom technology. I mean, since you're up, what's the $100,000? I mean, what's that all about?
That is just, and I don't want to get too deep in this, but it's software and hardware companies, servers. There's some server in free cash for the town as well. All those expenditures, they've transferred from, you used to buy a server, and it would be X amount of dollars, and you'd have it. You'd buy some software, you'd buy textbooks, and it would be good for 10, 15 years. Companies all have gotten smart, and there's an annual cost there to it. So
Yeah, because they get you married into it now, and they know they can make their money. So that's why, my look at it is that the school committee and yourselves, I think even at the town level, we got to think outside the box how to start addressing this stuff. Like I said, going back to textbooks, something, because at the rate it's going right now, you think you have budget problems. I think the town's got budget problems, but where these companies are taking advantage and the way the state operates, it's going to sink us. Absolutely sink us, because they know they got everybody right where they
Yeah,
want.
I mean, there's, we just, we just did an elementary, it's called a textbook adoption, but textbooks come with variety of software and packages. So that, we worked with the town to be able to fund that, and that's part of that 250 that's there. The total cost was just under $500,000, but the annual cost with that is $90,000 a year. So that's what's changed. And, it's tough. It's you try to negotiate, and you try to work a vendor off of each other, but, it's.
Yeah, well,
what's
something, it's
happening.
my understanding, the way things are going right now, especially with these private equity firms and all that, you think you're dealing with another vendor, but they're under the same umbrella. So there is no negotiation anymore, right? So that's why they got you, that's why they have you pinned down almost, because they're probably under the same umbrella. You think you're dealing with one company, you're dealing with a different company, but they're all under the private equity firm or something like that. Like I said, I think even at the town level and the school level, I think something needs to be done, and maybe it's going to require doing something legislatively in regards to this, in my opinion, because this is insane.
I mean,
Let's again, try to restrict it to questions, please. Thank you. I don't think Mr. Kelly had a question, but a comment. Thank you for your comment, Mr.
Can I
Kelly.
just ask Tom, through you, a couple real quick questions?
I just want to make sure that I give Mr. Kelly an opportunity to ask the.
Well, if he's going to touch on the school stuff, go, then I can float down the rest afterwards.
So 20 years ago, the school population was much higher. What was the percentage of the budget that was salaries as compared to the percentage of the budget today is salaries, as compared to the percentage that we paid for books 20 years ago and the percentage that we pay for books today? I'm going to ask you that at town meeting. I don't want to make.
I mean, off the top of my, I know we have a document. No, our percentage in salaries, has creeped. It's gone from.
Please direct our comments and questions to the chair.
Yeah, sorry.
Mr. Miller, do you have any, just a general sense? If you don't, you can certainly come back to the next advisory board and provide that information. We could provide that information publicly.
I mean, we did discuss.
We did discuss this.
I mean, it's gone from 82% to roughly 86%, 87% salaries of our total budget.
Over what time frame?
What was that document? It was about 20.
2005 or something
Yeah,
like
it's about
that?
20
Yep,
years.
okay.
And certainly that's something we're facing, and
I'm going to ask you how much would the enrollment went down from 20 years ago to today also?
yeah, we have that document too. I think we've gone down approximately, I think we were at 4,700. We're about 3,700 now, so it has gone down about 1,000 students over that 20-year period.
I believe it was around 25% is what we had discussed.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Any other questions? Oh, sorry, we have somebody on Zoom that's had their hand raised. Their hand must be getting tired. Yes, please.
Hi, it's not that tired. I've just been in front of my computer. Thank you for having me. My question is for Harbor Master Mike DeMeo. If he's still here and available.
Yes.
Okay, lovely. Should I wait for him to come to a podium?
No,
or-
go ahead and direct your question towards me, and I'll have Mr. DeMeo answer the question.
Okay, beautiful. My question is, I am a huge advocate for making sure that our waterways are safe for commerce, business, recreation. Our jetties should be safe, our harbors should be safe, our rivers should be safe. My question is the amount of money that you have suggested that we would get in grant money, is that coming from the DMF or the NOAA? Or is that Commonwealth of Massachusetts money based on what the residents of Marshfield would vote to approve the projects that you have suggested in the warrant?
Mr. DeMeo?
So yeah, good question. So currently, in my capital outlay, my budget, the 172, that would be a town request. There was no grants sought for that, based on the MBTA stuff. There was a lot of projects prior to last year that the town has done very well with grants to the tune of over $7 million. However, thus far, these funds would have to be absorbed by the town, unfortunately, if that answers your question.
Okay, no, I had no questions about the MBTA request. In your previous comment, you said that there was no federal funding going to happen for jetty restoration or the harbor master projects if the town didn't capital raise a certain amount of dollars.
Okay, sorry about that. So, yes, so right now we're in the modeling study of the jetty extension potentially of 240 feet, or potentially digging the harbor deeper down to a mean low water of 16 feet, or potentially 12, which I suggested. I think 16 is too deep for the area that they currently suggested. So the Army Corps will allocate $15 million when we get to construction of what we decide needs to be done. The town has a stake in that as well. The town actually has good input into what actually gets done. Either we raise the jetty, we extend the jetty, we dig the channel down deeper, or a variation of one of those three things. And the federal government will pay up to $15 million, and the town would have to pay 90-10 split, which is $900,000 for that. And currently we're on to complete the current project. We have to come up with 172 and change for the modeling and engineering of what has to get done in the future. And the projected timeline for this is hopefully completion in the year 2028.
Okay, so that $15 million is for the entire Commonwealth of Massachusetts, or is that just for Marshfield?
That's just from the Army Corps congressionally for the Green Harbor Jetty project. And that $15 million could come a portion of for dredging, jetty extension, jetty crest elevation. And that's the information that we're going to have back hopefully by June, July of that Army Corps study. As I mentioned before, the Army Corps did come down March 6th and brief the waterways as well as some other residents in the community. That was just a 30,000-foot layer, if you will, of what's been going on since last year, since the modeling started. So we're hoping to have the full completion back by this year in June.
So the study that's happening right now, is that something that has already been funded by Marshfield? Or is that something that is up for vote at town meeting to complete the study? We need funding for that.
It will be up at town meeting.
Is that study is part of this?
Yes.
This allocation here?
Yeah, the 172 is for the completion of the modeling and hydrographic survey that they're currently doing. So that's what we're due to pay them to finish that off. If we don't pay that, then this pencils down. Then as we move into the construction phase of the project, the Army Corps has already earmarked the $15 million because we're already so far along in this project and that was a question that I did ask at the Waterways Committee that at that meeting. I said, hey, look, I want to make sure that $15 million is hardened to Marshfield for the jetty project if the town's going to contribute $900,000 of the 10%. And based on what he said is that it's so far along that this project has been improved on so many levels that it is going to happen.
Who is the jurisdiction of the agency that would be earmarking these dollars? Is it DMF, is it NOAA, or is the Army Corps?
It's Army Corps.
And what is the benefit of the Army Corps to have access to our jetties in Marshfield to invest $15 million?
Because they're the owners of the jetties. Prior to 1969, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Waterways Division owned the jetties. And since 1969, the Army Corps took over those jetties. And I'm glad they did because we've got a lot of dredging for free since 1969.
No, I agree with you. So if this warrant does not pass at our town meeting, if we don't vote for the $172,000, Marshfield loses out on a potential of $15 million for what? Restoration of the jetties and dredging?
Potentially, yes.
What, in your opinion, as our harbor master of Marshfield, because you jurisdict Green Harbor, Brant Rock, the South River, do you feel as though $15 million is an appropriate number of what we need to restore the dredging and the restoration of the jetties?
I do, and that's the number that's congressionally, that is the max number that the Army Corps, the federal government can spend on a cap project of a small harbor. That's like the maximum amount of money that the government can allocate for our size harbor, which is pretty substantial. It may not be $15 million, it may come in a little less, but the government cannot legally spend more than $15 million for what is going to happen with the jetty extension, the jetty realignment, dredging and things like that.
But back to our question, the 15 million is, you're saying, is what they're allowed to spend up to. I think her question was, do you think that the 15 million is a fair assumption of what it would take to make those necessary improvements?
Absolutely. I do.
Thank you.
Yep.
And what, I have one more question, I'm sorry. What type of governance does Marshfield continue to control over our waterways if we take the Army Corps grant money for this project?
Mr. Galvin, does if the town, so long as the town continues to take or reject money from the Army Corps of Engineers, is there any change in control between the town of Marshfield and the Army Corps of Engineers?
No, it's still a federal waterway.
So that control doesn't change regardless of who, or whether or not we decide to accept money or to reject it?
It does not.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeMayo. Any other questions from the public on Article 8.6 before we move on?
I still got questions on the rest of the stuff.
Go ahead, Mr. Kelly.
On the Harbor Park maintenance, is that an annual bill, I guess you could look at, 7,000, or that's just something that comes up?
Oh, sorry, Mr. DeMayo.
Yeah, so Mr. Kelly, yeah, I put forth the $7,000, because basically Harbor Park, the cemetery and greens does mow the park, the Kiwanis pay for some of the fertilizing, but, and we do have some volunteers that come in and do the mulching, plantings. There's been some trees that have to be replanted. A lot of that's done through volunteerism, but it's just enough money to get the mulch done every year, things like that. I don't see it as a $7,000 every year. The Harbor Park actually has a gift account set up for the past 3 years and only has $250 in it. So my staff is in there as well doing a lot of the work, but there's a lot of volunteers that actually do most of the bulk of the work. So I'm just trying to get more interest in people to help with the park, because it is a good park. It's a great resource. The park is very clean. There's many events that happen there. We currently don't charge any fees to use the park. There's many weddings there and events, as you know. But, you know, it shouldn't be the harbor master staff kind of overlooking it all the time, you know, paying for plants and flowers and things like that. So, and the CPC does not allow funding for maintenance costs.
So what is the $7,000 like for?
That would help with the mowing, the plantings, the fertilizing, the edging, things like that. So we could bring in a company to help edge, mulch, things like that, fix the trees that are currently dead or things like that.
Is that town property?
Sure is.
So it falls under it should fall under the DPW, right?
It does, some of it, yeah. And the cemetery and trees does do the mowing, but a lot of the weeding and things like that are done by volunteers or my staff.
All right, so you're saying the DPW does go in and take care of the basics in regards to mowing the lawn and all that, but what you're saying is to keep it spruced up.
Yeah. Yeah, the edging,
Need
the
supplies and all that to do the work and all
Yeah,
that.
new plantings, seasonal plantings, the mums in the fall, things like that.
All right, thank you. Security camera server replacement. Is that a one-time fee, or is that something that we're on the hook for every year and an annual thing? Is that, do we own the server, or do we pay an annual fee on it or something like that to somebody?
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead, Mr.
I know it's been a long night. Yes, Mr. Kerry, that's a one-time cost. The Harbor Master Building been there since 2018, and the server that we had was kind of a borrowed server that was not perfect, so we're trying to not lose data in case the server crashes, all the cameras go down. Obviously, it's very important to have the data, so it would be a one-time cost, and that server should hopefully last at least 10 years. No maintenance agreements, nothing like that. It's just replace what's currently there, which is kind of a Band-Aid approach currently, so.
I appreciate that.
Sorry, Mr. Kelly, just to interrupt you for a second. Just a note from the chair, we're going to take another 5 minutes of questions on this particular article, and then I'd like to move to a discussion on how to proceed with the rest of the evening. But Mr. Kelly, please.
On the library grant match, the bathrooms, 20,000. So it's my understanding there's a $75,000 grant out there.
Mr. Maresco?
That is correct.
And the $20,000, so we're gonna have 20,000 plus the 75, so how much is being spent on the bathrooms?
I'm gonna ask Fred, could you give an update on the bathrooms at the library?
Fred Russell, Facility Manager, 92 Marshfield Street. Basically, we're gonna do a freshen up of the men's and ladies' room and the child's restroom.
All right, so is that gonna cost $95,000?
It may or may not. I don't expect it to be that much.
So you don't know it's gonna cost $95,000, and that's just the.
Right now, we plan on reusing the existing petitions, restroom petitions. So if we can reuse those, we won't be up that high.
Seems like an awful lot of money you're shooting for. I'm certainly questioning that. I appreciate it, Fred. On the school funding recap, can someone explain to me what recap is?
Mr. Strobel?
So that is the tax rate recap. That is the certification process for setting the town's tax rate for the annual billing cycle.
Thank you. And, the fire station bathroom renovation, $75,000. So, has that are we to say that with the money that was allocated, I think last April, is that project overrun on its budget?
That's correct. It did overrun. When the architect's estimate came in, we didn't account for the additional work that Mr. Resco was talking about, the water damage behind the walls in the existing men's restroom. And we did not account for, actually, the locker room, bunk room floors. We expected to reuse those. At that time, they were too far gone, so we replaced all the flooring in the locker rooms. We also replaced the stairs if there was, all the living quarters are upstairs. So in the event of a fire alarm, all the firefighters would be coming down that back stairway past the captain's office. And we didn't anticipate replacing the flooring, but we had to do that because it was starting to come up in the sides. We figured I'd take the opportunity to do that. That was it.
No, I know in the article last year it said locker room. So what do you consider as a locker room?
There are going to be, there are 4 lockers in each of the bunk rooms. So there's actually four lockers.
So it's not locker rooms, it's the bunk rooms, right?
It's a locker room with the bunk.
Yeah, but all the bunk rooms got renovated, right?
That's correct.
So do you think that went against what the town meeting article put forth last year?
No, it was in the scope. It was always in the scope.
Really? When
Except
it
for the
says
flooring.
locker rooms and bathrooms, but it's the entire bunk area upstairs that got renovated?
I mean, you've seen the bunk room, but the.
Oh, I've been up there.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm looking at it and I was like, I don't recall approving all this work. You know, that's the whole thing. You know, it says locker rooms, but then you get the bunk rooms where all the fire personnel sleep. It was all renovated upstairs. And I would imagine because that went beyond the article, in my opinion, that now we are $75,000 over.
No,
Let's keep it to questions, please. Mr. Kelly made a comment. Mr. Kelly, we have time for one more question, or one more minute.
No, I made my statement. We're good.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
All right, at this time, I realize that there may be other questions in regards to Article 6, but the time now is 9:50 p.m., and so it's getting a little bit late. and we could obviously spend a lot more time going through this all tonight. What I'd like to propose is that we suspend this hearing for now, pause the hearing, stop the hearing for now, and that we vote to reconvene at another time in the next few weeks, as is available for members of the Select Board and Advisory Board. Do I have any questions from
Yeah.
the Select Board?
Yes. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Before we do that, I want to make sure protocol is being followed.
Please.
Town council, for us to reconvene this meeting, it would require another advertisement of, okay. Yes, okay. So that would be, I'm not sure exactly what schedule you're looking for your next advisory board meeting. Would this need to happen before your next meeting?
No, not necessarily. I think the advisory board, I
You're
don't
in good shape.
speak to everybody, but I'm sure we could rearrange our schedule as need be in order to accommodate a second meeting. But, so, just to make sure I'm clear, the process would be is another meeting, 48 hours notice, just as is public meeting law. And so we would just need to make sure that all of us were able to attend in person or virtually, present sufficient notice to the public, and then reconvene at that time.
I'd just like to refer to my other board members here on the select board and ask
Please.
them. So, Steve, how do you feel about moving and reconvening at another date?
I'm fine with that.
Okay. Eric?
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Okay.
We have, Ms. Fiddler, we actually have an advisory board meeting scheduled, as just pointed out to me, on Monday, the 31st. I don't know if the select board is available at that time at 6:30 PM or.
We'll have to get back to you on that.
Sure.
So we will take that date, and we will be in touch tomorrow.
Great, thank you.
I have a question.
Yes, please.
Isn't the meeting supposed to go to 10:30?
This meeting?
You asking if it's protocol that we stay until that time?
Yeah, I thought I read somewhere that the meeting was supposed to go to 10. I know town meeting, yes. I thought there was something in I saw in regards to this meeting that was till 10:30. But if there isn't,
I don't believe there is. I think that was, I remember during COVID and whatnot, we tried to kind of lights out at 10:30, but we were there till midnight.
and we don't want to
so-
revisit that again.
Yeah. So we are all in agreement that we are going to take this meeting and reconvene at a later date, okay? I'd like to make the motion.
Well, let me just ask the advisory
Yeah.
board here if anybody has anything to add to that.
Yeah, I think on your point about extending the meeting, I think between now and the next meeting, we'll get some other, little more details answered by phone calls,
Yeah.
meetings and whatnot, prior to meeting together.
Yeah. I'd like to thank everybody for being here, and I realize that we really got into the weeds on a lot of these articles, and there's still a lot of work to be done. So I appreciate all of you being here, and we will add a lot of the notes to our agenda and get some answers to some of the questions in just these 6 articles that we got through in the last almost 3 hours. So I appreciate all of you being here, and I would like to make a motion to, yep, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to add one more thing. I do appreciate everybody's time, the advisory board, the select board, members of the public for being here this evening. I know it is going a little bit late, but, and we only got through, not even entirely through 6 articles, but the fact of the matter is that these are matters of our tax dollars and how our tax dollars are spent, and it deserves the time and attention to ask the questions and to understand exactly what we're asking our fellow citizens to vote on. So thank you, everybody, very much for spending the quality time on this to ask these questions, and we'll continue to pick this up when we meet again. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to make a motion to adjourn, and I'm going to ask a roll call for our select board, and you can do the same for yours. So I'd like to make a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion been made and duly second. A roll call is in order. Ms. Fiddler?
Aye.
Mr. Darcy?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Unanimous vote to adjourn.
You're gonna do the
The advisory board, I'd like to make a motion to end our meeting. Do I have a second? Second by Ms. Martin, and all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you.